theme for Zinnov Confluence is anti-fragility, beyond resilience, and today we are looking at Asia and its prominence in the post-COVID world, and all the reasons that put our vast continent to the force. To address this, we have curated an excellent set of sessions which are extremely relevant to the uncertain times that we currently find ourselves in. Before we dive into the Power Pack sessions, we have lined up for you, and we'd like to thank all our partners without whose continued support this event will not be possible. We will also be running very interesting polls on .com, and we will get back to you immediately. We also encourage you to keep the buzz going on social media by using the hashtags Zinnov Confluence and Define Tomorrow. There are goodies to be won for the most engaging social media posts. Right now, though, in the next few hours, we will be exploring how Asia has emerged as a global gateway to innovation, technology, and market, and how it will be instrumental as organizations look beyond resilience towards anti-fragility. To kick off this morning's session, I'd like to welcome Gaurav Malhotra, partner at Zinnov. Gaurav leads the Asia conversations at Zinnov and has been key in driving strategic initiatives. Gaurav, over to you.
Thanks, Nikita. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Zinnov's 13th edition to Confluence. It's a pleasure and honor to have you join us for day 4, track 1 of the Confluence Week. We have excellent audience and stellar lineup of speakers today, and truly appreciate the support that each one of you has shown us by joining virtually today. The theme for this track is Asia, the epicenter of the New World Order. We'll be discussing on how Asia is emerging strongly with the rest of the world, and what are some of the groundbreaking technology transformations, innovations, and market opportunities opening up. We heard so many talks during the week on anti-fragility, innovation, healthcare revolution, modern intelligent workplace, etc. And Pari, our CEO, also touched upon how Asia will become the next big destination. So here we are today to dwell further on this topic, on how Asia will be perceived more strongly, more committed, and ever ready in these trying times. I've been spending a lot of time studying APAC region and seeing very similar culture, mindset, collaboration models, and hunger between the Asian countries. There has been a rapid adoption to digital technologies, newer transformation models, remote working styles, and collaboration tools. Some of these were unheard of just a few months back. It is evident that enterprises which are globalized and digitally enabled are best positioned to brace ahead. Automation, efficiency, and operational agility will be more prominent than ever and propel the thrust to surge forward for future collaborations. With the current economic and political changes, most of the global enterprises would like to reduce their dependency on one single nation and diversify their supply chain portfolios, de-risk themselves to ensure business continuity. Post Japan's announcement of $2.2 billion stimulus package for companies to explore other locations, already 60 plus companies are moving their manufacturing bases back to Japan, and around 30 to 40 enterprises will be provided special packages to explore other neighboring countries to set up their manufacturing and technology hubs. Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam are following suit as well, with ways to attract foreign investments in their home countries. This is expected to create a $750 billion opportunity for the APAC region. From India's perspective, Apple's manufacturing partner, Wistron, announced setting up their PCB plant in India. Foxconn committing to $1 billion plus investments. Pegatron, Meilun, and Von Welz, a German footwear brand, are some examples of companies exploring India as a key investment destination. This will create 100 million new manufacturing job opportunities and growth of tier 2 cities as well. The country with its vibrant culture, huge domestic market, young working population, and data-rich ecosystem and stable government offers a great opportunity for connecting with other APAC, US, European, and driving future investments. So what makes Asia unique? Which APAC enterprises are competing at global scale? What is Asia's appetite for dominance? Let's hear some live examples in forthcoming sessions during the day. I would now like to take you through the agenda for the session and what these 2.5 hours have in store for you. Post my welcome note, we'll have Nilesh Thakur, Managing Partner at Zinnov, and Amita Goel, Principal at Zinnov, to give our point of view and insights on Asia, the global gateway to innovation, technology, and market. Post that, we have a very interesting fireside chat on selling the invisible India brand strategy by R. Balki, a very famous writer and director, admin of and director of path-breaking Indian movies. I have loved his movies a lot, and he'll be sharing thoughts on how APAC is creating a brand in itself, getting attention from global markets, driving customer loyalty, and repositioning itself to the world. I'm sure we are looking forward to his session, and this session will be led by Siddhant Rastogi, Managing Partner at Zinnov. Post that, we have a fireside chat again on Jay, the amalgamation of Japan, America, and India, where Mr. Rajkumar Srivastav, DCM, Embassy of India, Tokyo, and Mr. Takashi Suzuki, Director General, JETRO, will be joining in. This session will be moderated by Amita. We also have an external keynote session today on Digital Asia for a Sustainable Future by Mr. Samir Gerde, President, Cisco India and SARC. His discussion would be mainly around how business models are changing with the new normal and digital technologies to unfold in the next few years. Next, an interesting panel on redefining innovation from an Asia lens. We have Jay Kumar from Sabre, Manish Dalal from Endurance, Manish Kasliwal from ATC Asia Pacific, and Sanket Atal, Managing Director at Intuit, join in. Rajat Kohli, my colleague and partner at Zinnov, would be moderating this session. Towards the end, we also have a very interesting Z Talk session by Nikhil Kumar, co-founder and chief evangelist Setu. It's an API infrastructure company for financial services. He was also the head of developer ecosystem for India Stack and developed public digital platforms. And then towards the closing note, to summarize the session on Atmanirbharta, the art of self-reliance, we have Sangeeta Anand, principal at Zinnov. I would now like to thank all our sponsoring partners as well, without whom their support, this event at this scale would not have been possible. And as the Chicago Bulls roar and say, what time is it? It's game time. So let's get started. And Nilesh, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Really appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Confluence 2020. Hope you've been enjoying the conference over the last few days. Asia will account for more than half the global economy by 2040. What opportunities and risks lie ahead as the Asian century unfolds? Today, we will talk about what makes Asia unique and how global companies can leverage Asia, the global gateway to innovation, technology, and markets. Next slide. Historian and diplomat Joseph Nye, in a recent TED Talk, showed us how power is shifting from the west to the east over the last 200 years. When we talk about power transition, we often talk about the rise of Asia, but it really should be called the recovery or return of Asia. If you looked at the world in 1800, you would find that more than half the world's people lived in Asia and they made more than half the world's economy. Now fast forward to 1900, and more than half the world's people still live in Asia, but they are now making only fifth of the world's production. What happened? The Industrial Revolution, which meant Europe and America became the dominant centers of the world. We are seeing that what we are seeing in the 21st century, though, is Asia is gradually returning to being more than half the world's population and more than half the world's economy. And how did this happen? Today, Asia is 5 billion people, 2/3 of the world's mega cities, 1/3 of the global economy, 2/3 of the global economic growth, 200 of the Fortune 500 companies, 6 of the 10 largest banks, 5 nuclear powers, massive technological innovation, and home to some of the top-ranked universities. Asia is also the world's most ethnically, linguistically, and culturally diverse region of the planet. People in Asia are used to dealing with stresses, randomness, volatility, and uncertainty they bring. Their environment requires them to be anti-fragile and thrive in that environment. So how are people in Asia doing that? So today Today, Asia is home to, whether you gauge by demographic, geography, economy, or any other metric, Asia is already the present, and it will certainly be the future. It is for this reason that the companies cannot afford to get Asia wrong, be it for talent, for resources, for innovation, and for markets. By 2040, the world's GDP will be 50% in Asia and 50% the rest of the world. My colleague Amita will now take us through some of the examples and resiliency of Asia and how Asia has been able to get to this point. Over to you, Amita.
Thank you, Nilesh. As you correctly mentioned, Asia is the future. It is also, however, a very interesting continent, not only with the largest population in the world, but also highly diverse and huge income disparity. Also limited resources because most of the countries in this continent are developing countries. With such diversity disparities, it's also very interesting to note that the top 3 countries with the highest IQ on average happen to be Asian. I think that's very evident with the number of technology CEOs for global companies of Asian origin that we are seeing these days. And if by any means we were to say that technology is going to determine the next superpower in the world, it is worth noting that India and China together account for more than 5 million software engineers. That is absolutely incredible. When companies are looking at building solutions for this continent or countries in this continent, what they need to remember is that they need to deal with heterogeneity, simplicity, and still build elegant solutions. I'd like to walk you through some examples. Aadhaar. Who doesn't know Aadhaar? It's the world's largest biometric identification system. And as the World Bank says, digital ID is going to be a game changer and a force multiplier in the global push towards poverty alleviation, access to finance, and shared prosperity. We know more than half of the world's population is in the developing world. Without a legal identity, these people cannot avail social benefits. Corruption is going to be rampant. That's what Aadhaar solved for. Before Aadhaar was launched, a very small percentage of the Indian population, about 4%, had any kind of unique identification. But ever since Aadhaar has come in place, there's more than 1 billion of this world population that has legal identity, biometric legal identity. It has saved 12 billion to the Indian government, and it has allowed the government to pass on 22.7 billion worth subsidies. The world is taking notice, and developing countries like Morocco, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Tunisia, etc. are following this example and trying to replicate these models. I'd like to walk you through another interesting example, UPI. 10 years ago, how many of us actually saw a fruit vendor or a chaatwala, which is like a roadside snackwala, actually using any kind of digital payment mode? That's because even though net banking existed, credit cards existed, it is either super hard or completely non-accessible by the masses here. And therefore, what UPI has solved for, it has solved for a huge financial inclusion. Companies across the world are taking note. It is very interesting to see how it's becoming a global model. In August 2019, Google wrote a letter to central bank when the Federal Reserve of US is trying to launch a program called FedNow. Google said that this program and this platform has been really thought through and well designed. 19% of the India's GDP in 3 years' time was already flowing through UPI. They recommended the US Reserve and the central bank to look at it as a model if they are going to implement an interoperable banking system for faster payments in US. Countries like Singapore and UAE are also following this example. Another example, WeChat. It's the world's largest social powerhouse, if you ask me. The way it is integrated, the whole Chinese community inside and outside of China is incredible. It started by being a messaging app, a photo sharing app to build the social network in a country like China, where other apps are censored usually. But now, if you have to hail a taxi, file a police complaint, call a doctor, or use your bank account, it's WeChat. More than 90% of the work that you do in China can be done alone by that app. It is widely said that WeChat is going to launch a digital ID, which actually could replace the state ID. That is really powerful. And as Professor Willie from Harvard Business School says, it's going to be a predictable evolution. We can talk all about data privacy, but there is no app in the world, according to me, which has integrated more than 1 billion people as well as some of these platforms and some of these apps have done. Let's look at another example, Raxul, a company which was formed about 10 years ago in Japan. It has completely democratized the way printing industry looks like in Japan. When Raxul was launched, the huge printing market in Japan was monopolized by big printing houses. What Raxul did was, through its sharing economy model, and it allowed the smaller printing houses to use their downtime. It shot up to become Forbes Startup of the Year. It also became a very, very interesting, successful case study for the Harvard Business Review, and the company has grown 120x within five years. That's because it's solving an unsolved problem and democratizing the way things work in the country. Well, we have seen some very, very interesting examples. Let's see what makes Asians different. It so happens that Asia is one of the world's, it witnesses one of the world's largest natural disasters and most frequently. And it so happens that Nilesh and I happen to have witnessed firsthand two of the biggest natural disasters. I was in Tokyo when the Great Tohoku earthquake hit, and Nilesh was in Mumbai when the 2005 floods hit Mumbai and ripped the city apart. But what we saw day in and day out was images like this. What you see on your top right is a Mumbai dabbawala who relentlessly, in spite of the floods, wants to serve the customers and make sure the lunch boxes reach them. What you saw and what you see in the right and the bottom is what I saw every day in Tokyo. I would see thousands of Japanese lined up in full discipline, calm environment to get necessities like milk and sugar. Children, people with 90 years of age above were climbing stairs to save power in the country because the nuclear reactors were completely devastated and TEPCO's power transmission was disrupted. If you see scenes like that, it teaches you lessons of life. And I think that is one of the biggest lessons in my life. Let's look at the recent COVID example. The Asian countries like Singapore, China, Japan were the first to hit. They had no other examples to follow. What did they do? They showed quick thinking, leaning on technology. They built hospitals with thousands of beds using AI and 5G in China. They used robots to disinfect hospitals, keep people apart. They used what was called draconian measures at that time, but has led to maintaining and reducing or managing the mortality. Asian countries have leaned on technology, leadership, discipline, and belief in science to manage the fatality. What are the results? As of July 16th, you can see the mortality per million is remarkably low in Asian countries as compared to the West. Well, civic discipline, testing, tracing, and treatment has worked for them at least relatively better than the rest of the world, and it sets an example about the resilience and the kind of character and the discipline these countries show in time of tragedy. I would like to pass on to my colleague Nilesh to see how can we leverage Asia.
Thanks, Amita. According to data from the World Bank and IMF, Asian countries, China, India, Japan, Indonesia, along with the US, are expected to be the top 5 countries in the world by the size of the GDP in 2024, relegating European economic powerhouses to lower ranks. Southeast Asia is another powerhouse, home to 600 million people. The 10 countries comprising the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, account for $2 trillion in GDP, just a tad smaller than India's, and as a region make up the third fastest growing economic bloc in the world. After China and India, so the top 3 fastest growing economic blocs are in Asia. By almost all measures, it can be said that this will be the Asian century. Other than dealing with the impact of pandemic to the business, and acceleration of digital transformation, nothing should be more important for global chief executives than the emerging Asian nations, be it for talent and for markets. They need to get that right. As we move forward, for most of the countries of the world, one of the critical issues will be shortage of talent. Korn Ferry estimates that there will be talent shortage of more than 85 million people by 2030. This is due to the increasing demand for talent and decreasing populations across the world. This shortage of talent will result in $8.5 trillion in unrealized revenue. With the talent shortage will affect most countries. India is one of the very few countries which will be able to meet the talent needs, and this will allow it to outpace growth of the rest of the world. India will need to redouble efforts on good human capital development programs to maintain and benefit from this advantage. GCOEs should actively partner with government and NGOs to solve for the three stakeholders: their companies, their employees, and the country India. With growing economies, good consumption trends, massive digital transformation, and GCOE hubs, Asian countries will continue to be purchasers of technology, goods, and services. As Pari mentioned in his keynote on Monday, if someone still has doubts in their mind about Asia and particularly India's market potential, they should now look at what the recent investments in Geo by the top tech giants and also the top tech giants and also the private equity companies. Most of India's 1.3 billion people have access to world-class yet inexpensive digital infrastructure. This, along with government deregulation in manufacturing, focus on digital transformation, and support to startups, would result in massive productivity increase, resulting in economic growth and increasing discretionary spend. GCOEs have a significant role to play to ensure your companies can take advantage of this huge market opportunity over the next few years. There is one more kicker which will further accelerate the growth in Asia. Today, Asian companies are generally less profitable than Western companies, particularly the US companies. One of the reasons is the massive investment in low returning sectors like infrastructure. Whereas US has high percentage of capital invested in highly profitable sectors like technology, as more investments are made in technology companies like Jio, Tencent, Alibaba, and the unicorns in India, those profitability numbers will start changing. This will make it possible for even more capital available for future growth. So India and the rest of the Asian countries will provide major portions of future growth for the global companies. GCOs again should influence their companies to have a clear business strategy, just like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have recently shown. How has Asia done this? What can the world learn from Asia? As Amita mentioned in the previous section, agility, anti-fragility, STEM education, frugality, digital first, scale, relationships, ambition, hard work, government and private public partnerships. These are some of the things which have made it possible for Asia to return to its glory days from 200 years ago. Now, talking about the COEs, we have recently worked on a research on global COE hotspots. We wanted to see where is the talent available for global companies to benefit from. And again, the Asian countries are again on the top. As a special for Zinnov Confluence, Amita is going to preview some of the findings over the next few slides. Amita, over to you.
Thank you, Nilesh. I would like to set the objective for our report. Some of the countries are across the globe that we look and study in this report are actually known to be good locations for software engineering talent. What we wanted to focus on, if you have to build centers of excellence, which basically means ability to build scalable and full software engineering teams while leveraging the ecosystem in those countries with ease of business and build teams in affordable cost. Which of the countries and how do they fare when we look at these four parameters in terms of ability to build centers of excellence? Well, we studied many countries. You see the 13 of them on the map here. We looked at countries closer to the big markets like US. So we looked at Canada, Latin countries like Mexico, Brazil. We looked at many Eastern European countries, such as Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Czech, etc. We also looked at some Asian countries like India, China, and Philippines. Some countries like Ukraine were not studied on purpose because we see, due to the recent geopolitical instability a couple of years ago, the interest in global companies in going to countries like Ukraine is declining. Well, let's look at the first chart here. If you were to compare on a macro view, the availability of software engineering talent, which is basically the size of the bubble that you see there, and the color of the bubble indicates the cost, red being very high cost. It's very evident. Countries like, of course, India and China have very, very huge pool of software engineering talent, more than 5 million. Other countries like Canada, Brazil, Mexico also have a big pool of software engineering talent. But if you see in terms of cost, countries like India, Brazil, Bulgaria, etc., provide relative cost benefits when you compare with countries like US and Canada. What we were interested in doing a practical analysis to see if a company wants to set up 100-member full software engineering team comprising of junior, senior engineers, architects, DevOps people, quality assurance, etc., with the pyramid that you see in front of your screen there. And along with that, a product management team, which comprises of product managers, owners, and UX, UI designers. What would that cost them? How much of that talent would be easily available in these countries? And that's what we're going to show you in the next slide. So let's look at the cost first. If you were to set up a full 100-member team for your center of excellence, the cost of building the team or hiring the talent would look something like this. What we did was we compared it with US average. In US, it would take about 10.6 million to set up a team of 100 people, while you see other countries relatively provide a cost advantage. Of course, I don't think that's a surprise finding. What is very important to see here, though, is that some countries provide a higher cost advantage than others. And these are countries like India, Philippines, Belarus, etc., while Eastern European countries are relatively more expensive than the countries I named, and Canada being even more relatively expensive. We also wanted to look at software engineering maturity, ecosystem maturity. It's very important. When companies come to set up centers of excellence, they would like to leverage the academia, the startups, and the service provider ecosystem. The way we did it is we looked at the top 1,000 R&D spenders, which we call the Zinnov 1000 list, Z1000 list. We looked at the availability of tech startups in each of these countries, the revenue of the outsourcing service providers, and the availability of engineering schools in each of these countries. What you see on the chart here, the size of the bubble is again the size of the talent, but you see the countries have been segregated into nascent, evolving, and mature countries. Canada, China, India stand out to be the mature countries because of a very strong and mature ecosystem, while countries such as Romania, Czech Republic, Poland, Mexico, Bulgaria are evolving at a fast pace, and countries like Lithuania, Estonia, and Belarus have started picking up. We also ranked in our study overall ranking based on talent availability, the cost of hiring talent or setting up the offices there, ease of doing business, and the maturity of ecosystem. What we notice is the top 5 countries happen to be India, China, Canada, Poland, and Mexico. If you see more in depth on this chart, you see the ease of doing business is higher in Eastern European countries and Canada. Well, most of the Eastern European countries are part of European Union, and therefore their data privacy, IP security is higher than many other countries on this list. If you see from a talent availability, cost, and maturity of ecosystem point of view, countries like India, China, Canada, etc. stand out. Countries like China sometimes struggle because there is only 10% of English-speaking population in the talent pool, but they still have done really well in terms of the ecosystem they have developed. We have done in-depth study on each of these countries. This is a 200-page report. If you're interested in knowing more about this report, please get in touch with us at events@zinnov.com. And I would like to welcome back Nilesh to thank our contributors for this study and this report.
Thanks, Amita. So we want to really thank our colleagues, Tanvi Singhal, Ankit Mishra, Pranav Anand, Adar Agrawal, and Nachiket Mahajan, who worked on this report and on this research for this Asia deck. Thank you, Amita, and looking forward to seeing you all in the future at the next live conference.
Thank you.
It begins with passion. Wild, unstoppable fire that fuels everything in its path. But passion is just the beginning. The picking up of the chisel. It needs commitment. A commitment to persevere, no matter the obstacle. That stroke of brilliance, pure, raw genius that was once labeled crazy. Catalyzed by collaboration. The ability to take the best from everyone and together create magic. Fascinating shades unfold. The ability to deliver outcomes with speed. To derive simplicity out of complexity. In building a sustainable world and in unlocking massive efficiencies. All of this while delivering clockwork precision. It is the little things we do in a great way every day. The exponential power of 1,000 small steps that defines LTTS. Here's to a start of new possibilities. Here's to engineering the change.
Think about the challenges of the last 10 years. Regulatory uncertainty, shrinking margins, evolving customer demands. Now imagine the next 10. How will you harness blockchain? What comes after mobile? What comes after Basel IV? How do your customers connect to the cloud? And how will you connect with them? We see what's coming because financial services run through us and brands reach millions of customers through us. That's trillions of dollars in trades, billions of shareholder communications, yet we're right there with you, day in and day out. Everything we do, every insight we provide, answers one question. What's next? So you're ready to move now and a year from now. Ready with scalable tech, ops, and multi-channel comms. Ready to reach clients at the right time and place. Ready with data that puts your business into view. Broadridge, ready for next.
Thank you so much, Nilesh and Amita, for that insightful keynote. Moving on, what was once known as a hub of cost arbitrage is now a hotspot for talent, technology, and innovation. But what is India's brand story that attracts so many organizations, big and small? That intangible something that makes India an undeniable destination for all things innovative. Our next session is a fireside chat with R. Balki, the Indian filmmaker who is formerly with Movitas India. R. Balki, the writer and director of movies such as Chinikam, Pa, Padman, in conversation with our very own Siddhant Rastogi, managing partner Zinnov. Over to you, Siddhant.
Hi all, welcome to this much awaited session with R. Balki. He needs no introduction, but we still managed to do one. So without taking any more time and putting you directly with Balki, here is my first question to you, Balki. You have this very rare ability to understand the pulse of the audience. You're behind some of the most popular ads that we have almost ever seen, with taglines such as "Daag Achhe Hain," "Jago Re," "What an idea, Sir Ji." And in your field, you've actually been nicknamed as the Idea Man. What is the process you follow to achieve this connect with the audience? And is there a method to this ideation madness?
Uh, Let me tell you something. Hi, Siddhant, and thank you guys for having me here. Uh, the first thing is, I think it's very presumptuous of any of us to assume that we can understand anybody else. Like if somebody kind of comes and tells you that I understand the pulse of the audience, it's a complete. I think it's absolutely rubbish because it's very difficult to understand yourself. Throughout your life, you're trying to struggle and try and understand yourself. If you can't even understand yourself, what business do you have to kind of say that I understand a lot of people? I don't. The fact of the matter is, try and kind of figure out what appeals to me, and I believe that most communicators, most people who want to be in the communication business, the first and primary requisite is the fact that they can represent a sizable part of the audience. They can have facets in them which are like a lot of people that we speak to, and we're pretty representative of the normal people. So I think most of the time I'm trying to just understand myself and write things that appeal to me. I don't know anybody else. So that's the trick I've always employed, and I don't think it's about taglines or whatever. Taglines are an encapsulation of a thought. It's got nothing. What people see is the end, expression of the thought. But it's the thought which is all about. How do you express something? The first thing in any communication is to kind of just be noticed. It's all about saying what you want to hear in the way you want, in a way that makes you hear it. I think that's what is really kind of key to communication. That's what I've always followed.
Got it. That's very interesting, Baki. The next question is, personal to your life. The story goes that you applied to the Chennai Film Institute, but did not join because apparently you didn't like the panel. You later joined Gindi Engineering College, but dropped off to pursue advertising. And you ended up as the group chairman of Mullenlow Lintas. Not bad, people would say. So how does one have such conviction in life to pursue their ideas and dreams?
I really think it's more than conviction. It is, I think, about let's say, lack of qualification. Is what I put it. I don't think I was qualified to do anything more than actually think of random ideas. And if there's a business that pays you to think of random ideas which can be used for their benefit, there's no bigger match than that. Find me the random ideas, get a bit of science, and that's a lot of common sense more than any great study. So I just felt I was naturally gravitating towards a business that required no qualification, of which I was a prime candidate. So that's how it really happened. And I really think that the thing of the Chennai Film Institute, a bit of it is true, but a lot of it is a joke, because I think the Gindi Engineering College had a better cricket field, and I wanted to play a lot of cricket, and that's why I went there.
Awesome. I think you're just being a little too modest and kind to us, because the fable also is that you were part of the first experimental training batch by Mudra Communications. It's an experiment that led to the creation of India's finest advertising school, that is MICA in Ahmedabad. What is more interesting is the entry was through a 100-word essay, and you qualified among thousands, if not more, applicants. So can you tell us what did you actually write in those 100 words?
It's the one piece of paper that I wish I could get back. I don't think I don't remember what I wrote. All I remember was the fact that I think I wrote something like the fact that I find life very boring and I find images a lot more interesting. I said something like that, and there was a genius on the other side who actually thought that I could become a writer or an advertising person, and I just wanted to do films, and I got addicted to advertising on the way. But I think the credit goes to more the person who kind of saw that this kind of a chaotic, unstructured, aimless kind of a person who is all over the place and who's so random could actually kind of think in a way that could benefit a lot of businesses. And I think credit goes to Naganand Kumar, who was the person who was heading the organizational development section of Mudra at that point in time. To identify people like us. 6 of us were there, and identify people like us. Each of us came from a very different background.
Interesting. Yeah, so Balki, that brings me to the next question, right? What aspects of storytelling can actually be taught? What are the aspects that come through experience, and what are the aspects that you just have to be born with?
I think millions of books have been written on this, and lots of people have had lots of theories on this one. Till today, I really think it's about waiting for lesser interesting stories to go out of your head and waiting for the more interesting ones to drop in. I think it's patience is one thing. Yes, you may suddenly observe something, suddenly you may crack an idea, suddenly you may get some inspiration, but it's waiting for that more than that, because a lot of crap first comes into your head, and it all depends on where you stop. I think what differentiates a good story and a bad story is where the storyteller stopped to pick the story. He said, say, okay, fine. There are many reasons why people choose stories. Some of them you may like, some of them you may not like, and you may figure out that you may have many reasons why the person chose to kind of find that story. But it's all about waiting for something that that you at least think, if not anybody else, at least you think is damn interesting to kind of go ahead. And I think that's the primary request. Yes, of course, life experiences, memory, imagination, connecting, and all those are kind of normal things for every storyteller, and everybody does it. Our grandmothers and mothers used to do it much better than us, and they used to tell it far more simply and far more rivetingly than us. But fundamentally, it's this.
Got it. Next question, Balki. You made some fabulous movies, Chini Kam, Pa, Shamita, Ki and Ka. And most interestingly, these are movies that you scripted, directed, even as you were the creative director and say the chairman of Low Lintas. One would have imagined that in a full-time corporate role, such as the one that you were in, you would have very little time, especially to script such original stories on such hitherto untouched topics. And yesterday we had a panel of speakers trying to tell us that, with all this work from home and technology, each of us can actually do more than one job. I find that very hard to do personally. So I wanted to understand from you that you being the pioneer in this, how do you accomplish this? How do you do a full-time, high-stress role and also something so creative?
No, I don't think it's about stress or whatever. I just realized that I used to work 7 days a week in advertising and non-stop. And I said, okay, I'll work 5 days a week and I'll do Saturdays, Sundays, I'll write. And I realized that I was a lot more efficient working 5 days a week. It was not that, I think sometimes, work fills up the time that you have. You kind of stretch work to fill up the time that you have. Or you kind of, if you have a sharper deadline, sometimes it works better. For me, it worked to my advantage because I could easily do the 7-day work in the 5-day stuff. And I actually told everybody, please don't work on Saturdays, Sundays. It's actually damn good to kind of not work on Saturdays, Sundays. But I used to write on the weekends, so that was really a turning point for me.
Wow, that's interesting. You just very kindly told all of us to be more efficient.
I really think this working 24/7. I mean, I really think sometimes we can do a lot more in a much shorter time, and it doesn't mean you got to do a lot more to fill up the extra time that you have. I think the extra time is to kind of enjoy the extra time.
Got it. So you went ahead and completely quit as the group chairman of Pull&Low Lintas in 2016. Now that films are your full-time pursuit, I imagine, what is it that you're trying to do differently?
Nothing, actually nothing. I've just gotten a little lazier because I have nothing to do for the 5 days of the week. I have only something to do for the 2 days of the week because that's what I kind of done. But I actually know I write a lot, and I kind of have a lot more time to watch things, read things, be at home with my wife and my cats, and I think I actually am a lot more easy right now. Though, yeah, when I start a film, though I write a lot, but when I start a film, yeah, it's the same kind of chaos as it is in an advertising agency, if not more, because it's pretty chaotic once it begins. But between films, I'm relatively easy.
Perfect. How do you plan now? So you used to do like one film in a couple of years. Do you plan to increase on that? Do you plan to scale on your writing and on your production?
No, I don't think so, because I come from a belief that it's much more joyful watching a film than making one. So I love watching films. I mean, why make something which doesn't give you the same joy as all the things that you watch? Till an idea kind of hits me where I find the same joy, at least, where I at least find the same joy as in watching, I don't move ahead. So I'm a very reluctant beginner. I'm not in a rush to kind of do something. Yeah, sometimes I might have 3 films that I want to do one after the other. But the last film I did was Padman, which is about 2000, I think 17 or 18, I forget. It's quite about 2.5 years since I did the film. But though I produced Mission Mangal in between for my colleague and co-wrote it, but most of the time I'm just reluctant to start. And of course these times everybody's reluctant to start, but I think it takes a big push. I live with an idea for a long time before I start writing it. But once I finish the script, I never write a script that I don't want to do. I don't write a script and figure it out. I think of the idea and I write the script if I'm sure I'm doing the film.
Okay. So, Balki, I have to ask you this question. Almost everybody I know has asked me to ask you this. We've all heard you say that the legendary Ilaiyaraaja and Amitabh Bachchan were your original inspirations to get into the film industry. But what really beats me and astonishes all of us is how do you actually get both Amitabh Bachchan and Ilaiyaraaja to be part of your debut film?
It's just pure luck. I just had a thought. I messaged Amitji. He was interested, and we'd just done one ad together. It was one of his first ads after his comeback, which was in Parker Pens. So I messaged him. I said, if you like the idea, I'll write it. He said, I like the idea. I wrote it. He read the script. He said, let's do it. It just happened like that. I was damn lucky. And I don't think a lot of people are as lucky as I am. And Raja sir too is the same thing. I went to him as a fan and I said, sir, I'm Balki. I've never met him before. I said, besides being a huge fan of your music, which I am, I would like you to do my film. He just looked at me, smiled, and said, of course, sit down, let's talk. It just happened like that. And I think I was blessed to kind of meet 2 people who I, till today, find more inspirational than anybody else in the world. I think these 2 people have really inspired me for a lot of reasons, just not for their work. It's also for the way they are, the conviction in what they do. And even in terms of the kind of human beings they are. And it's quite interesting to kind of be with people at that kind of level. It's really, I'm really lucky.
Wow. So the one of the other things that I got was, did you write a script for Amit ji, or was it the other way around? Did you impress him with the script?
No. I wrote it for him. I thought of him, and
Okay.
I said I need an idea for Amitji and Tabu. In fact, I wrote it for Amitji and Tabu. So if they hadn't kind of done it, I couldn't have done the film. And the same thing with Pa. I wrote it for Amitji, Abhishek, and Vidya. And if they hadn't done it, I couldn't have done the film. So those two films, I didn't have any options but the characters I wrote it for. And in fact, the maneuvering that Amitji and I have done to get Abhishek on board on Pa is phenomenal, because he was saying, how can I play my dad's dad? I mean, a lot of things. I mean, it's like, it was the thing. So finally, we kind of convinced him to kind of do it. So yeah, but I didn't write it for anybody else, just for them.
Okay, perfect. And also, the other thing is, I think one of the key takeaways for all of us is we kind of plan people, roles, and then get people, but this is the other way around. Some food for thought for all of us corporate folks. The second, just in line with that, is you also not just worked with Amitabh, right? You worked with a plethora of different types of highly accomplished actors, including Sridevi and Tanush and Akshay. And I'm sure each of these people have their own styles, their idiosyncrasies. How does one go about working with different type of talent? And I'm sure you've done that in your career as well. How do you identify, how do you work so well with them so that the idea comes out very clearly?
Firstly, I've worked with Sridevi as a co-producer on English to English. My wife did the film. But I think this thing of idiosyncrasy is the wrong word. I don't think any human being has more idiosyncrasies than one has themselves. I have more idiosyncrasies than everybody put together, because I know my idiosyncrasies. I don't even know about this. So it's kind of wrong to assume that people have idiosyncrasies and we have to manage them. First, I don't think I'm here to manage anybody. I'm here to kind of react, respond, answer. The relationship is one of understanding. Okay, we're trying to do something here together. It's not I'm trying to outwit you or you're trying to outwit me. It's about just getting together and doing that thing really well. So I am not here to manage anybody's idiosyncrasies, and neither are they. We're here to make use of each other's abilities to create something that is interesting, and it's worth spending the time together. I think if you approach anything with that in any organization, including when I was at Lowland Death, it's not about managing people's idiosyncrasies. It's about almost saying that nothing should come in the way. You manage anything because it shouldn't come in the way of the business that you're doing, or something that you're creating. So everything is managed for a purpose. It is so that the things that we came together for continue being smoother and nicer to kind of create than anything else. So I always look at a situation only from that point of view, not to manage anything else. I don't.
Wow, okay, that's a good point. So one of the things that I had to ask you, Balki, and we discussed this, and that's the reason I'm wearing what I'm wearing. So what do you think is common between, and this is to the audience, and you can reply in YouTube comments, what do you think is common between Karl Lagerfeld of Chanel fame, if you don't know him, Michael Kors, Tom Ford, Adele, and Balki?
No, I know you're talking about the color black. I know you're talking about the color black.
Yeah. Yes.
But I know you're talking about the color black, but I would actually would love Karl Lagerfeld's the kind of longer coats that he kind of designs, the longer jackets that he designs. I would like my black to be that. I really still haven't got the right kind of a black, a semi-long coat. It's slightly longer than most of the coats, Lagerfeld's coats, and I really would love that. Otherwise, there's nothing else common.
So one of the things that I was thinking is it about consistency in your own positioning, or say for a company, is it important to have something so consistent in the way they do it that, at the cost of just being trite? Is that something that goes behind your thinking?
Not at all. It's pure laziness. It's just, I think first, black is kind of so convenient. I've got hundreds of black t-shirts. I only buy black only because it's easier to choose. I just pick out any one of those stuff. And it just saves me a lot from thinking about it. And also when I put on weight, which I do every now and then, and my stomach doesn't show, it makes you look a little slimmer. So black is kind of convenient in a lot of ways. And it's universal. Nobody questions you when you're wearing black. Um, and I think it's just the most neutral thing that you can get, and the easiest thing for lazy people. And I am very lazy, and that's the only thing. There's nothing about branding or whatever. I never thought of it for 1 minute. Sometimes most of these laziness is what becomes identities, I suppose.
Okay. Thanks, Balki. So I just have two questions. Movies almost always have a very different theme. Is that something that you think about consciously, or is it about building some awareness for overall social cause? What goes behind that?
No, I don't believe in social causes like that, because we live in society and we are responsible for society. So that's the cause we kind of live in, for number one. So my job is to actually try my best. We keep borrowing from society. We keep, at least from the society around us, from the near society around. I can't talk for the whole globe, but we keep borrowing, and yes, we keep borrowing. But sometimes it might be nice to kind of just give back to, something for. It could be a word, it could be a thought, it could be a way of being, it could be a character, it could be anything else. It could be a way of just adding to society rather than keep borrowing from it. My desire has always been to kind of, can I do that with this? Can I do this with this? Can I do this? Because yes, even while doing that, you borrow a lot from society, but in that process, can you just put something back?
Got it. So, Balgi, my last question, and this is more, we are asking this because you're the grandmaster of storytelling and branding. And what we really wanted to understand is your message of how, or what is the story that India should tell to change the course of its future, and what is the branding that overall India should try and achieve.
I think first we should get our product absolutely right, and then we
Okay.
should try and advertise it. Always, I think I think we need to get our product very, very right first. I would advise all clients always to get their product very right before branding and kind of advertising, because it is not easy, because we are a fantastic tourist destination. We've got such beautiful stuff, but we have to get our product right. We have to make tourism a lot more kind of friendly. Countries with even 1/4 our attractions kind of market it. I mean, have got their product and their infrastructure so right. And there's a lot of things about India, and there's a lot of fantastic thing about Indianness. But I really think we have to get our act together on just simplifying a lot of things, getting a lot of things right, being a lot more transparent. And once we do that, I think it's not even so difficult. We are there. We're almost there. We're getting there. I think we should do this example of branding. Yes, while we think on the side, but we need to know what's the kind of brand that we want to kind of build, and actually and we should do that according to the product that we're trying to create, because you can't have one vision as a brand and one vision as a product and try and match the two. You can't do it. So I really think that branding thought should happen based on the product that can be realistically created, and that is being attempted. Because you're hearing a lot of things, so I really don't know exactly what is trying to be created. Because besides the economic part of it, we all want to be economic superpowers, but beyond that is what I mean.
Got it. Thank you so much, Balki. I think a lot of food for thought for all of us. I think what you meant was the wood behind the arrow is as important. You have to be consistent, clear, and also have the right product. And of course, a lot of other things that you told us today's session are very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Balki, for
Pleasure.
sharing your personal
Pleasure.
experiences. Yeah, thank you so
Pleasure.
much. Please have a good
See
day.
you guys. Bye. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
At Dell Technologies, we believe technology has the power to drive human progress. Improving healthcare, gender equity, education, and the environment is all part of building the future we want to live in. It's why we're committed to bold goals over the next 10 years, because we can't just talk about progress. We must make progress real. It starts with our team. When we're diverse and inclusive, we reflect our customers, and we're able to unleash innovation. That's why by 2030, 50% of our global workforce and 40% of our global leadership will be women. It's why we're launching STEM programs to foster the next wave of technology leaders and AI initiatives to help us mitigate bias. Through all of this, we must make sure our business practices are sustainable, so we're reimagining how future products are designed and delivered. By 2030, 100% of our packaging and over 50% of our product contents will be made from recycled or renewable materials. Plus, for every product a customer buys, we'll take back an equivalent product to reuse or recycle. We must act on a global scale, including everyone in the coming digital wave. So we're committing to transform the lives of 1 billion people in the next 10 years. Through technology, we'll advance healthcare, education, and economic opportunity initiatives around the globe. It's not only what we do, but how we do it. At the core of all these goals is our enduring promise to uphold ethics and privacy. By 2030, we will fully automate our data control processes, making it easier for our customers to access, delete, or update their personal data. At Dell Technologies, we believe innovation is the key to a better future. When we bring together new thinking, new solutions, new collaborations, and new voices, we can make progress real.
Thank you so much for that engaging discussion, Bharti and Siddharth. Moving along, the trilateral cooperation between Japan, US, and India is key to fostering free and open Indo-Pacific region. But what is the scope of these nations coming together for business? To answer this and help you understand the power of regional cooperation and collaboration, we have with us Takashi Suzuki, Director General, JETRO, Bengaluru, who is specialized in international relations and has been working with JETRO since 1994. He has also played an important role at JETRO HQ to facilitate several India-specific initiatives. Suzuki-san will be joined by Rajkumar Srivastava, the Deputy Chief of Mission, Embassy of India, Tokyo. Raj has undertaken special efforts to strengthen the India-Japan cooperation in healthcare, agriculture, digital, and infrastructure areas, which offer multiple growth opportunities. And as the session chair for this fireside chat, we have with us our very own Amita Goel, Principal and Head of GCOE Practice at Zinnov. The upcoming fireside chat will no doubt be a riveting one. Over to you, Amita.
Thank you so much, Nikita. And I want to thank Raj and Suzuki-san again It's an honor to have you here, and both of you in your careers are at a position who can make an incredible difference in these triad relationships. So I would like to say Jeho at the end of this chat. Ohayou gozaimasu, konnichiwa, namaste, hello to the audience. Thanks for joining us. What we have seen in a post-Cold War era is there is a dramatic shift in interest and alliances between countries across the world. In the last couple of decades, China has shot to power, Japan has stood strong third, and India has rose from power from ninth position in 2010 to become fifth largest economy of the world. Clearly, the geopolitical center of gravity is shifting towards Asia. We have seen in the past that there have been conversations around Japan, America, and India coming together for over a decade. U.S. investments in India have grown from 20 billion about 2 decades ago to 140 billion bilateral trade. In case of Japan, in the last few years, the number of companies has grown from 500 something to 1,500 something. That is incredible interest in bilateral relationships. However, the trilateral relationships, Japan, America, and India, is taking a completely new meaning in the current scenario. And I would like to ask, I'll start with Suzuki-san. What do you think is driving the new meaning for this relationship between these three countries?
Thank you, Amita-san. Ohayou gozaimasu. And I recently think like the era of with COVID and post-COVID must be the new phase of China plus one, finding or hunting for Japanese business. This must be one of the biggest drivers, I think. And Japanese business, honestly, their main concern for this China plus one used to be which country has enough and fairly low-cost labor. However, recently, especially after COVID, their main concerns are how they could create digital transformation in existing business and diversify their global value chain, not depending on a single partner country. However, there is no single country which can play whole function of China, such a big and developing nation and our most closest neighboring country. So it is also the challenge for Japanese business to structure alliances with several partner countries to cover or develop further. And India is one of the best potential partner countries to us. And I believe we should expect more Indian digital capability to realize our digital transformation. Our recent focus, JETRO's focus, is to promote more collaboration between Japan's hardware and India's software, as Prime Minister Modi meeting with our Prime Minister Abe a few years ago. And regarding America, recently we see the big American companies Google in digital and tech. Of course, it is obvious that their moves are affected by the relation between America and China. I would like to advise Japanese business not to miss this momentum. They should also be involved in this movement in any way. Another thing, I expect America to show more leadership to create regional rules and regulations in Pan-Asia region on digital matters. No one can deny China is also showing more influence to this field. America's presence could bring more balance in the region. And moreover, it can be the steps for the future common rules and regulation on digital-based global business. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzuki-san. Very well said. Raj, the same question goes to you as well. Please, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Good morning to you all. Ohayou gozaimasu from Tokyo. I think Suzuki-san has very well put the thoughts about digital. So I will talk about something else. But basically, if you look at this trilateral, Japan, America, India, in terms of political exposing this particular idea was in December 2018, when on the sidelines of the G20 summit, our three leaders had met and established this dialogue of Jai. At that time, Prime Minister Modi also said that Jai, as you know, in our language means success. So the success is ensured even before the starting this particular dialogue. But coming back to the business side of this cooperation, I think what is more important to understand that this trilateral is a triangle in which each of the bilateral is very strong. So India-US relationship is very strong, India-Japan is very strong, and Japan-US has a very good security alliance apart from the business alliance. So in that sense, you have the foundation of three very good bilateral relationships. And then over top of it, you have certain vision and values commonality between the three democracies. There is convergence of views in terms of the challenges that we face today and the opportunity that we see today. And then on top of all that is the complementarity. I think if you look at what India brings to the table in terms of growth, in terms of demography, what Japan brings to the table in terms of capital, technology, and its maritime nation, and US in terms of innovation and also the global leadership role, I think there is a complete complementarities among these three democracies. So with that kind of foundation, it's only a question about looking at the different pillars of business relationship where the three countries or three business groups bring value addition to each other. And in the course of the further discussion, I will talk about the specific sectors apart from the digital that Mr. Suzuki has talked about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj. That was very insightful. This whole trilateral relationship was taking its own meaning, a new meaning, a stronger meaning. And in middle of all this, COVID hit us all in middle of our eyes and left us ambushed completely. So given the current scenario, what do you think, and maybe this time I'll start with you, Raj, what do you think is the key priorities for India to solve in short term, immediately? And how can they leverage this relationship for that?
So, as you said about the COVID-19 being a crisis, which is now a global pandemic, and it has also opened up certain areas in terms of what are the vulnerabilities. And those states, those countries which are able to fill up these vulnerabilities using this crisis time will stand definitely a lot better than the pre-COVID time. I think that India has done very well in terms of our healthcare, given our challenges. For example, if you see as what was the universal health care in India before the pre-COVID time, and in that time, I think we are 30% below the international average. And of course, with respect to Italy, US, we were probably half of the UHC indices. So in that sense, the initial lockdown that India had gone through was to compensate for that gap that we had at the start. But in this period of 2-3 months that we have been able to establish without doubt that when it comes to special crisis like this, our nation can stay together and create opportunities out of it. For example, the kind of medical supplies that we have been able to create for ourselves as well as for the countries who were in need. I think the number goes to 130 countries received medical supplies from India during this time. We were producing literally no PPEs, and today we are self-sufficient. We are in the big time, what you call research and development process of vaccine development. So very clearly, healthcare sector, which was a kind of a problem area for India. In fact, you remember that 2 years back, we had launched the Ayushman Bharat program. So we were already moving in that direction of making our healthcare affordable. But I think COVID-19 has created further opportunities to make the movement much more expeditious. So I will definitely highlight healthcare as one of the key pillars on which you will see a lot of trilateral cooperation between Japan, America, and India. The other two sectors that are most highlightable are, one is the food security, because in these kind of crises, the most essentials are highlighted. And I think in that sense, food security, agriculture, food processing becomes an important area of cooperation. We are doing a lot of good work with Japan. We are doing good work with US, and there will be opportunities in that sphere. And digital, of course, with the kind of platform you are using today, you understand that digital has been highlighted as the most key important area. Sitting in Japan, I can tell you that COVID-19 has expedited the movement of digital transformation in companies in Japan, which was very, very slow movement. And I think now with this 2020, this decade will be a big change in Japan in terms of digital transformation. And that's why it will create new opportunities for Indian IT sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. I think that's incredible, the self-sufficiency in a short time that you talked about. Thank you so much. Suzuki-san, the same question for you. What do you think is Japan's key priorities as COVID has hit and disrupted economic balance and supply chains?
Okay. Yeah, Raji-san already commented, and I'm still a bit hesitant to say this, but Japan is not the best country for its digital utilization. Telemedicine is available only 1% of hospital. Penetration rate for cashless payment is 20%. E-commerce market is only 10% of total. Still, we have small number of players in delivery or sharing kind of services. These are the challenges. And this is the biggest reason and motivation for us to work together with India. And also, I believe Indian business have the vast opportunities, even in Japanese market. Actually, American companies are also seeking such chances in Japanese market. So in that sense, JAI partnership might happen easier in Japanese market. Thank you.
That's wonderful. I have many questions, but I'm getting a lot from audience. So I'm going to give them the first chance if you're okay. So I have a question here, and that's for Suzuki-san. Why does Japan still see India as a potential business partner, as you said, Suzuki-san, and why is India not a partner already? What is missing?
Yeah. Now, the Japanese companies in India, we can count more than 1,400 companies, and they are having more than 5,000 offices and factories here in India. And almost half of them are manufacturers, and majority is automotive. Still, I must say, diversification of the business sectors and the size of the business in India, surprisingly, very few number of Japanese SMEs. Most of them are big Japanese companies. So I think this background is a kind of the reason for less diversification of the Japanese business with India. So I'd like to diversify more, but I think easiest way is to take advantage of the digital capability of India, which is the biggest, the competitiveness of India. That's why JETRO is promoting that. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think that's really well said. So the audience, basically Suzuki-san is saying that there have been big conglomerates who've set up base in India. The true partnership is when even SMBs can, from Japan, leverage India. And I think that's really, really well said, Suzuki-san. Thank you so much. Raj, I have a question for you. From a work culture perspective, what are some of the commonalities that will help this trilateral relationship? And what are some of the differences that might pose a challenge?
So the commonality, I would say, comes from the fact that both Japan and India have a background which is of, I would say, of enjoying the process more than the outcomes. This is slightly philosophical, but what I mean by it, that the process itself is so crucial that we are not always looking at the bottom line. So many times people ask, like the question that was asked to Suzuki-san, that why it is not so. It is not so because it takes time in terms of doing the due diligence, in terms of understanding that your path is secured and you are not going to retract back on that. And I think in that context, India and Japan are very similar. The difference is the level of growth in terms of the economy. So Japan is a developed economy, and we are very eager developing economy. And in that context, a lot of force of disruption in India is very different to the kind of Kaizen that is followed in Japan. That means every day, let's do a small improvement, and that creates a good process. In India, we want to change the world tomorrow because of our desperation for the growth. And I think that's very well, it's important to have that kind of desperations because our needs of the population is huge. So that's why somebody had said that in India, the growth is almost like running on the treadmill, that if we run, then we will remain where we are. So I think this is the difference between Japan and India of the level of economic growth that we are today. You will find the difference of perception of people. And in terms of our historical and ancient civilizational background, you will find similarities of thoughts in terms of how we want to go ahead. So that's the kind of complementarity and convergence, I would say, you will see between India and Japan. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj. I think that's really, really well said. I'm going to take on my own questions now in interest of time. And I'm reading my virtual notes here. So basically in April 2020, the Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, said that US was working with India, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, South Korea, and Vietnam on how to restructure these supply chains to prevent something like this from ever happening again. So COVID has been an awakening call for many countries across the world on how to and where to rely on your supply chains. My question to you is, if you were to rank in order of 1 to 3 as key drivers that are leading to a better bonding of these 3 countries, I'm going to give you 3 options. You can rank them from 1 to 3 as you feel in your opinion. So the first driver is the US-China trade wars. The second is having a China +1 strategy. You know, like I said, excessive reliance for manufacturing, raw material, and supply chain has shaken all of us. And the third is the trade is being wary of China's growing power in Asia Pacific, or as they call these days, Indo-Pacific, and the growing democratic erosion inside China as perceived by the rest of the world. What, according to you, Raj, are the first, second, and third parameters leading to excessive bonding in Japan, India, and America?
Yeah, I will answer it in a very different way. I would not rank them in 1, 2, and 3. I would rank all of them number 4, because I have 1, 2, 3 elsewhere, and that 1, 2, 3 is about what I've already talked about. It is about the positive relationship that we have in the 3 countries, the positive scenario that we create by going business together, by doing things together, not only among our 3 countries, but also these 3 countries working together elsewhere for enhancing peace, prosperity, and stability. I think those are the drivers. The drivers, other things are actually helping the other drivers to move faster. If you, for example, look at the stock market indices of Dow Jones, BSE Index, and Nikkei for last 10 years, you'll be surprised at how mirror image they are in terms of the growth process. So it is happening in terms of business has realized that we are very similar in terms of how do we respond to external stimuli. So that's why I would not rate them as 1, 2, 3. I would rate them all at number 4. There are other 3 things which we 3 of us can do together. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's a true diplomat, Raj. And I love your answer for the positivity it brings in the conversation. Thank you so much. Suzuki-san, the same question goes to you as well. Please share your thoughts.
Okay, yeah, after Raji-san's very nice answer, I hesitate, but I mostly commented about B, China +1. So I think this is a big driver, and we should challenge for this. But my point is that JAI is just a 3 countries relation, but we should not limit this relation only among these 3 countries. This should be expanded to more. This will be my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We just have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to request Suzuki-san first. If you were to give out a key message to Indian businesses and Indian government on how they could leverage this relationship at the right time, what would your message be, please?
Okay. Yeah, my message to Japanese business is let's have new angle or point of view to your business with India. This is my message. And the JAI concept is one of them, of course. And also I have my humble request to Indian government is that we need a clear and strong commitment to free trade and support and involve itself towards the global value chain. At least allow business relation with China, I have to say. Otherwise, Japanese business will not be able to have any interest to create new business opportunity with India. Thank you.
Wonderful. Raj, final comments from you?
Yeah, I would like to comment that, there are certain things which were already in the pipeline, so that will be expedited during coming times post-COVID. And there are some things which are newly initiated in this crisis time. So in terms of, for example, what Japan has been doing in India, I would rate them into 5 I's. That is infrastructure, investment, industry, which means manufacturing, innovation, and ICT. And I like to highlight that this part of ICT, which includes digital partnership, startup ecosystem, venture capital, talking to each other more often, creating opportunities, talking about cyber security and cyber infrastructure, and 5G and beyond. These are the new areas which you will see a lot of traction in terms of JAY, because the topic was JAY. And I would say that you have already seen in the last 1.5 months the kind of investment flows that India has received, especially Reliance Jio has received. And I think the future of relationship between India and Japan, for example, will be written by companies like NTT, NEC, KDDI, Rakuten, Sony Entertainment, those kind of companies, Hitachi, will be writing this story. Of course, supported by already a diversified group called Suzuki. So I would say that future of this relationship will be much more brighter, and we would not be surprised that what Suzuki-san mentioned, that 1,500 companies going to 15,000 should not take much of a time, because Japanese smaller SMEs go in kind of a keiretsu system. More big companies expand their operations. You will find a Mitsui can bring 100 more Japanese companies. A Hitachi can bring 100 more Japanese companies. Rather than we looking for SMEs from Japan, we should ensure that Hitachi becomes an Indian company like Suzuki has become.
Wonderful, well said. Thank you so much, Raj and Suzuki-san. Really amazing session and great insights. Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Arigato.
On April 1st, 2020, Altran joined Capgemini to create the world leader in intelligent industry, delivering digital transformation for the largest industrial and technology players. Altran is the world leader in engineering and R&D services. Its 50,000 talents support leading clients from the design to the development and delivery of tomorrow's products and services. In the telecom sector, 10,000 of Altran's engineers support their clients, in particular with R&D networks. Altran is working with Vodafone to deploy 5G in Italy, Spain and Portugal. In aerospace and defense, Altran has created a complete interactive replica of an aeronautics plant. It can be fully operated and controlled in virtual reality. 9,000 specialists are redesigning the automotive industry, ready for the decades to come. This autonomous electric shuttle was designed for fast connections in airports or smart cities and prototyped in the Netherlands and one of Altran's expertise centers. For autonomous and connected cars, Capgemini already manages the digital systems to process the data required by an autonomous vehicle. With Altran, Capgemini will now fully cover both the digital and the industrial technologies. Other cutting-edge sectors, such as energy and life sciences, will also benefit from this expertise. This acquisition creates a group with nearly 270,000 employees in around 50 countries. The group's combined 2019 revenues amounted to 17.3 billion euros. pioneering intelligent industry together to harness the full power of new technology and data for the largest industrial and technology players.
Do you know NetApp? It is that invisible hand that is powering your world. From the time you wake up in the morning and as you go about your day, whether you are at work or shopping online or sending money to your family, or you are a university student attending lectures through the day or seeing a friend off at the airport in the evening, NetApp is everywhere. In today's fast-paced digital world, NetApp helps brands manage the huge amounts of information created every day. NetApp helps businesses become more efficient and data-driven, in turn giving you the best experience ever. NetApp touches your life by empowering companies to change the world with data.
Thank you, Suzuki-san, Raj, and Amita for an extremely insightful session. While the world is rapidly changing with new behaviors and rules being defined as the new norm, there have been disruptions across small businesses, enterprises, supply chains, processes, and even our social lives. Not only has social distancing reduced the number of people at a place at a given time, but businesses are also being forced to go online and look at new ways of operating. How can Asia move towards a sustainable future in such times? To answer this, we have with us Samir Garve, the President, Cisco India and SAR. At Cisco, Samir is responsible for sales, operations, growth initiatives, and investments in strategic alliances in the theater. Over to you, Samir.
Hey, thank you, Nikita. And I must congratulate Pari and the team for having put together a phenomenal virtual conference. I happened to listen to Balki for a little while, and then I heard Mr. Raj Srivastav and Suzuki-san. Interestingly, my boss's name is also Miyuki Suzuki. So it's pretty interesting that I kept hearing her name through the course of the last 25 minutes. The topic that we're talking about right now, which is in terms of digital Asia for the sustainable future, it takes me back to a report that I read about Asia in 2030. I am sorry, but I think I can hear someone else. That's okay. That's normal in these virtual conferences. So I think one of the things that I get very excited about being in Asia is, Asia is probably going to contribute anywhere between 55 to 60% of the global GDP in the next 10 years, right? We'll probably be responsible as a continent for an overwhelming majority of the 2.4 billion new members of the middle class who will enter the global economy. Finally, and I was looking this up, nearly 43% of the world's largest companies, 43% of the world's largest companies are going to come out of Asia. Now, in terms of digitization, of course, Asia has already been in the forefront. In 2019, there were nearly 2.3 billion people using the internet in Asia Pacific. So clearly, we are the first to welcome the new sunrise every day. We are emerging from this crisis before anyone else. And we will probably be the first ones to welcome the new dawn of digitization. So if you go to the next slide, please. And I think this is really, really critical because while COVID-19 was amongst the most devastating pandemics or a black swan event to hit all of us, it by no means was the first one. And like previous crises, I think it'll definitely show us more opportunities. Clearly, if you look at SARS epidemic, which triggered the e-commerce initiative in China, and we've not looked back since then. If you look at MERS, which boosted e-commerce in Korea, and then of course our own self-inflicted pandemic of demonetization, which gave an impetus to digital payments, right? But I think we will see new behaviors, we will see new rules, we will see new normals. It's pretty interesting, right? I was talking to a very large IT service provider in the morning today, and to their chief digital officer. And typically they come and pitch to you and say, this is what we can do to help you reduce costs. This is what we can do to help you improve your efficiency. And interestingly, the pitch that they came and made to me this time was not anything about efficiencies or cost reductions. They actually came and said, Samir, we will invest in your business to help you reduce costs. And that really helped me figure out whether there are new rules of engagement in this new norm. So if you go to the next slide, please. And I personally believe, and I'm not going to go through each one of these aspects, but I think this world is probably going to see a significant disruption in all aspects of lives, right? Whether it is social, whether it is small businesses, whether it is to do with large enterprises, whether it is to do with impact on processes or supply chains. I, for a fact, definitely think that the restaurant business is going to change drastically. The number of people dining out is probably going to reduce significantly. Although I must say that countries where it's been opened up to have food outside in a restaurant, people are really excited about it. But at the same time, they're a little worried about it. I think what we will see is less consumption of alcohol outside the home, maybe more inside the home. We will see some of our farmers losing revenue. So what does this mean for farmers? What does this mean for the hospitality industry? What does this mean in terms of diversification that they'll need to start doing? I mean, I'll give you an example. Rakhi is coming up, which is a big festival in India. And if you were to look at the overall things that you talk about during Rakhi, the last thing I can think about is Oberoi sending me a WhatsApp message to say that they can deliver a cake and some chocolates with a Rakhi to my sister anywhere in the country. And believe me, the prices that they talked about in that cake and the chocolate was anything but a kind of an Oberoi pricing. So I think what we'll see is people diversifying into areas which we never thought those industries will get into. If you look at supply chains, I think manufacturing will get disrupted significantly in the years to come. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. So if you go to the next slide, please. I think three things, in my opinion, or three tracks, in my opinion, will shape the new world. Number one is about trust. And I think trust was always important in any business. I don't think that is going to change, but the definition of trust will change. The definition of trust will probably revolve around the promise of health and safety, like never before. Information, familiarity, and experience is what will build trust. So if you can ensure that you are fully transparent about how you're delivering your products or how you're delivering your services, I think that will ensure that you will build a lot more trust. You will see significantly new regulatory environment to help build this trust, which governments will need to get from India in terms of new compliance guidelines, which will become a lot more stringent. We know about a lot of countries in the East Asia who are already using masks, or even before the pandemic, they were very familiar with using masks. Today, you're not allowed to enter restaurants without a mask. And I think those kind of guidelines are very simplistic at this point in time, but I think they will become a lot more stringent as we go along. I think we will see a significant emergence of disruptive business models. Everybody is talking about it, so it's not something that is new for the audience over here. But the preference for digital and no or even low touch services will increase significantly. I think there will be a reinvention of processes, new invention of new systems in the way your services and your products will get delivered. And I do believe, and I heard Uday Kotak once talk a little bit about this probably around 2 months ago, where he said, I think before the pandemic, there were 100 ships going across the river to the other side. Due to the pandemic, probably around 5 to 10 of them will survive. The remaining 90 may not. So you will see significant consolidation in most industries which are impacted in a big way. And lastly, of course, you will see the rise of automation, the acceleration of Industry 4.0. I think repetitive and routine tasks will get significantly automated. India is well known, and I heard a little bit in the morning when Amita was talking about India as a destination for outsourcing. Frankly, if you think about it, I think we should move away now from thinking about bodies and number of people to how we can be the leader in AI, automation, and bots. I think that is probably going to be a better positioning. And tying it back to what Valki said, right? How do you build a good product before you start marketing it, right? I think we need to ensure that we move our product positioning from being about outsourcing and lots of engineers and lots of bodies that we can give you, to more a slightly higher up the value chain conversation about automation. So if you move to the next slide, typically what does that mean in terms of shaping the new world? As someone who is leading Cisco in India and SAARC, I can probably talk about technology for hours. Maybe there is a lag in the slides here. Rasik, if you move to the next slide, that's fine. I can talk about how technology can shape the future of Asia for probably a few hours without somebody stopping me. But what do all these changes really mean for this continent? Where do the opportunities lie? And how can we really capitalize on them? I think we can talk about 5 things in that respect, right? And I really like the way Raj kind of talked about 3 things or 5 things, and I think that's something that I like doing too. Rasik, is there a problem in moving the slide? It looks like there's a problem in moving the slide. Don't worry. Try and see if you can listen to me and capture what I'm trying to say, right? I think the first thing that we will see is the rise of the digital consumer and the workforce, right? Asia is, let me give you a few numbers here. Asia is home to approximately 4.5 billion people, right? Out of which 2 countries account for about 2.6 billion out of that. The median age of Asia is 32. And in countries like India and South Asia, that average is around 26. Okay. And we have close to, out of that 4.5 billion people, around 2 billion people are in the workforce. India alone has around 500 million people in the workforce. So 25% of Asia's workforce comes from India. And by 2023, which is not too far away, right? It's around 3 years away. Asia will probably have 3.1 billion internet users, up from 2.3 billion. And we will have 3.1 billion smartphone users or mobile users. Now think about it. You have 4.5 billion people. You have an average or a median age of between 26 to 30, all enabled by the internet. 70% of them using mobiles. I think pandemic or no pandemic, even without the pandemic, I think we should be focused on figuring out how we can focus on this digital consumer and the workforce. That's number one. I think the number two thing is going to be about being inclusive and democratic, giving democratic access to all services. Now think about this, right? I'll give you a few pointers on this, right? India or Asia is home to around 35% of the world's poorest people, right? 35% of the world's poorest people are in India. And nearly 32 million children in just South Asia are out of school. And Southeast Asia will need approximately 4.7 million health workers by 2030 to make up for the current deficit. I mean, we talk about this in India terms, but half of this 2.3 million deficit of health workers is going to be in India alone. So India needs another 1.2 million health workers. And there is no better way to fill this vacuum or fill this gap than technology. So I think what we will see is that the old model of inclusiveness, where we thought we can build hospitals or we can build clinics or we can educate a lot of people to fill this gap, is an organic way of doing it. The disrupting way of doing this would probably be through technology. And we will see that the access, the democratic access of health becoming available to a whole lot of more people through technology. I think the third thing that we'll see is distributed and balanced economic growth, both for healthcare, education, and those are the two big reasons. Healthcare and education are the two big reasons why people migrate from smaller towns or villages to big cities. You will see a significant increase in remote work. I'll give you a small example. I find this very interesting. People who moved back to their own hometowns as the pandemic started and the lockdown started have actually triggered a significant economic change in those smaller towns, because there are people who are highly salaried employees who move back to smaller towns and have triggered an economic change in those smaller towns. Whereas large urban centers like Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai have actually seen this trend, which is called a reverse migration that has happened. You will see significant localization of businesses, right? I think world trade is expected to contract approximately 32% in 2020 alone. So there will be a premium on local businesses. There will be a premium on providing reliable supply chain of products within where consumers are. And finally, globalization of talent. I think it's not going to be easy to justify India based on just availability of talent. It'll also have to be about the value that you can provide. And hence you will probably fight against people not just in Ukraine, but you will fight against people who will be willing to work in the US from home at a salary which could be lower. So I think globalization of talent is something which we need to be very, very clear on. It is kind of difficult, I'm sure, for you to follow what I'm saying without the slides, but if it's I'll move a little faster to ensure that we can get on with this. The other thing that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on was why is manufacturing so important for India right now or for Asia? So if you look at it, Asia has a GDP of around 30 trillion. The world GDP is around 86 odd trillion, right? Out of that 30 trillion, approximately 20% of 20% of the GDP comes from manufacturing. So that's around 6 trillion, right? And believe me, that is a significant portion. That's approximately 35% of the world's manufacturing GDP, which comes just from Asia. And if you look at the Asia map, which is something that you would have seen if these slides were there, if you look at the Asia map, you will find that countries like India and most of South Asia, to some extent ASEAN, are all in the late teens in terms of the contribution of manufacturing to the GDP. Whereas if you go towards Eastern Asia, which is more China, Japan, and other such countries, you will find that they are in their mid-20s in terms of their contribution of manufacturing to their GDP. So overall, if you look at it, if Asia kind of provides 35% of the global manufacturing GDP, and around 20% of the Asia GDP comes from manufacturing, it's going to be very important for us to become self-reliant in these aspects of manufacturing. And I think what we will see is a requirement for future-proofing this industry by preparing it to pivot to cater to new emerging opportunities and behaviors which become more and more critical. And I think the lack of infrastructure and other significant obstacles to catch up with the rest of the digital world in this particular space of manufacturing is going to be critical. And I think there are lots of ideas about how we should do this in Asia, but I just wish to highlight 5 of them again. Okay? First, I think we need to make supply chains a lot more agile and optimized for growth, right? Everything from infrastructure, sourcing, BCP, zero-touch production, distributed footprint, etc. There is a need to significantly improve supply chain visibility with visibility tools. I think the days of saying you will get your material when you get it are over, right? Everybody wants to know, where is my delivery today? So I think getting that supply chain visibility up and running is probably going to be the biggest investment that you will see in this manufacturing area. I think the second is increase in optimizing your supply chain by creating a digital twin. And I think we've been hearing about this as something 3, 4, 5 years ago as something which was out of the movies, of a science fiction movie. But today, this is a reality, right? To make sure you bring down the walls and create a dynamic, adaptive, and connected supply chain. I think the third thing is clearly something that we've been talking about. We had a conversation with Chuck, who's our global president, Mphasis, and PM Modi. And very interestingly, Mr. Modi said a very interesting thing. He said, Chuck, we've seen a lot of presentations on Industry 4.0 around the world. And I've seen a ton of them myself, where you say that sensors will take care of everything. There'll be a platform which will manage this. I will give you one factory and show me everything implemented in that. And I think time has come for us to actually do that across industries in terms of Industry 4.0 implementation. And then as you augment your supply chain and factory, you need to augment your workforce by leveraging technology and tools. And finally, I think it's going to be important to believe in this new dictum, which says, what's good for the planet is good for the business. And I think digital technologies can accelerate the reduction of global emissions by up to 15% by 2030. Mr. Donald Trump may not agree with that, but I think it's important that we as leaders are looking at this aspect of sustainability very, very closely. And then finally, I think there are years where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where years happen, right? And I think we have seen that kind of being said in different ways by various leaders around the world. I think we are in a similar situation right now, and we need to look at what's happening today and how we respond to this will shape our future. So how do you respond to it? How do you reflect upon it? And how do you reimagine your future is probably what is going to determine the scale of transformation that Asia will see. I've touched upon a lot of things over here, but having been in the forefront of innovation at Cisco, I believe that any and every problem that you can think of when it comes to technology adoption, India is really the test bed for it. If you're successful here, you'll be successful anywhere. Like they say, right? If you can drive in India, you can drive anywhere in the world. So I think one of the aspects of our product positioning needs to be become the test bed for all new technology. And finally, before I end, I just want to say this is the time for the world to recognize that our differences don't matter. We are all in this together. In fact, it's probably for the first time that everybody's on the same side, right? And we have a real chance to get something good out of this. Hence, leading with empathy becomes really critical, leading our teams through this crisis, but also supporting the communities that we live in, right? This problem is much too large, much too complex, and far-reaching for it to be solved by an entity working alone. It's not possible. Quite plainly, this is not over for anyone till it is over for everyone. So thank you very much. We need to trust in each other and work together to not only navigate this new world, but thrive in it. Thank you for this opportunity. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Sameer. We have a question from the audience. The meaning of digital can mean different for different countries. In the new world, do you see a common definition coming up? That's the question.
I think personally, I feel it may be different in terms of the life cycle of adoption of any digital technologies. But personally, I feel this particular pandemic has democratized and secularized the adoption of digital technologies, right? You will find countries like India, which are typically thought of as developing countries, which may adopt things like 5G a little later normally, will probably go for it faster because we are prepared for it. We have leapfrogged the broadband wired trend completely and gone to mobile internet, right? We have 600 million internet users in India, and we have leapfrogged completely with just 100 million broadband user and 500 million mobile internet users, right? Not many countries have actually gone down that path. I personally believe you will see developing countries probably adopting technology if their governments are focused around it, adopting technology faster than some of these developed economies. So will the definition be different? I don't know whether the definition will be different, but I think the adoption rate might surprise a few people.
All right. Thank you, Sameer. Unfortunately, we will not be able to take more questions. Although, would you be open to taking a few more questions offline? Is that okay?
Thank you. No problem.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Thank you once again, Sameer.
Cisco Launchpad has been very instrumental in our success to go to the device or the networking side of the business.
One of the most important value additions that I would like to highlight is that it has helped us add a better structure into place and understand the business aspects of things.
They connected us to UI UX team and also analytics team where the core of our product lies.
The help has been really tremendous. I think one of the interesting pieces that we felt Cisco would actually help us is how can we align a product line to what they're offering.
We found Cisco team outstandingly generous in terms of giving their time, giving their expertise, giving their support.
I would really recommend any aspiring startup to really apply for the Launchpad program and try and be a part of it. It's an amazing journey as well as it's a very fruitful one at the end of it.
Thank you once again, Samir. Your insights were not just apt, but pertinent to the times that we're actually living in. The truth that path-breaking innovation is happening beyond the Silicon Valley is getting profound with Asian companies such as Hindustan, Samsung Electronics, occupying significant positions in the global innovation rankings. What are the other examples which emphasize the significant competition that the APAC enterprises are posing at a global scale? How is Asia redefining innovation? Witness this riveting keynote panel discussion with the leading technology and Asia experts, Manish Dalal, the Senior VP and General Manager, Endurance Asia Pacific, Manish Kasliwal, VP and Chief Business Development Officer, Asia American Tower, Sanket Atal, Managing Director, Intuit India, Jaikumar K, VP and Managing Director, Sabre Bengaluru GCC Sabre Travel Technologies Private Limited. And chairing this session is our very own Rajat Kohli, partner at Zinnov. Looking forward to what I'm sure will be an interesting panel. Over to you, Rajat.
Thanks, Nikita. Thank you so much. Good morning, and thanks to all the panelists to be part of this interesting fireside chat. I appreciate your valuable time. Over the next 30 minutes, we will discuss and highlight key interesting points related to redefining innovation from the Asia lens. Giving some facts, Asia is a true constitute of countless talent, 14 million plus developer ecosystem by 2024, growing number of startups with funding over 30 billion in the last 2 years, presence of more than 1,200 R&D centers in India. Asia region constitutes 40% in the geography-wise split of the regions housing the global enterprises featured in the Forbes 2000. And we can relate innovation is the beating heart of such growing economy. Asia long-term growth depends on it becoming more innovative and going after the opportunities at the right time. Asia is definitely innovating, but countries are innovating at different speeds and in different ways. As per the study, I read a 1% increase in per capita R&D increase innovation by 0.2% in developing Asia. Now, it's interesting to know how can Asia become more innovative, considering existing quality-based education, creativity, critical thinking, and other soft skills that must complement the technical and academic process. And on the other side, I think so Nilesh in his opening session mentioned, considering the GDP share and the growth, Asia should not only be the source of talent, it should influence the companies to have goodness plans for APAC also. Now, starting with the fireside chat, I'll go to Manish from Endurance to start with you. Good morning, Manish. And if you look at the current scenario, and I see that a lot of developments are happening because of the COVID also, according to you, what are the motivations or the opportunities for software services enterprises in Asia to cater to both the domestic and the global enterprises in terms of the innovation? It would be good to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Hi, Rajat. Good morning, everyone. Rajat, the way I think about this is, when you look at product and software, or rather, I'll take a step back, is India has always been very big in software and services. And increasingly now you're starting seeing, at least for domestic innovation, a lot more pure product development, right? So when you think about product and software development for the domestic markets, we heard a lot about the startup ecosystem, but just right now, it seems like a perfect storm because you've got 4G, you've got 5G coming up, you've got, literally, whether it's, all the public cloud players have cloud regions now in India. You also have a large number of internet applications being developed in the country thanks to a lot of Chinese apps being blocked. So if we just look at just the innovation happening for India across access, across the infrastructure, and across internet applications. And when I say applications, I mean content, communications, commerce, and community across the board. There's just a lot that's happening, right? Combined with that, when you look at the need for small business, particularly to come online in India and do a lot more e-commerce, you're going to see, and you're starting to see, at least for internet companies like mine, a lot of innovation happening in the space, a lot of adoption of new technologies. When I sort of flip over to global, we've traditionally had a lot of MNCs, again, like folks on this panel, who've outsourced out to India. But increasingly what I'm finding is with the entire work from anywhere and the availability and trust in Indian talent, and I'd say Asian talent, I'm particularly seeing that some of our senior engineering leaders are now very open to hiring across Asia, even to build on core platforms that we still saw a lot of hesitation, I'd say, about a year ago. So I'll stop there. But whether it's MNCs allowing innovation on core platforms out of India, not just for Asia, but for the US, as well as domestic market innovation happening in areas like internet, healthcare, tech, etc. It's a very interesting time right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree to that. A lot of innovations are taking place, a lot of developments are happening. But now if I move to the other industry, to Jaya, to you, while globally you are in stress because of the travel industry is going down, but at the same time, how are you becoming anti-fragile? The theme of this conference, that how are you becoming anti-fragile? What are the mechanisms that you are putting in place to use the opportunity and the time to think of innovation? How are we viewing this opportunity going forward and the level of readiness for the same? Jay, I think so you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajat. As you mentioned, it is very important to be anti-fragile in these times, given that the pandemic has hit us. The way our company went about doing it was to take charge of the situation. We totally took control of the crisis rather than letting it direct us. And then what we did was we approached the capital markets, financial markets, to make sure that we were financially strong to navigate the crisis. We took swift decisions on shoring up our finances, taking austerity measures, and so on. Most importantly, we already had built the technology backbone or the technology infrastructure for our people to go and be able to work from home. And that actually served us in good stead, because overnight we went from working in the office to everybody working from home. So in some sense, the infrastructure backbone had already been built to be anti-fragile. What was required was for the company to reorient itself, the employees to reorient themselves, and reorient the processes to continue the momentum on the work that was already going on. In terms of innovation, which is where one of the important focus of this conversation is, I would like to mention that back in January 2020, a lot of steps had been taken in the company to move the company towards being leaner, meaner, and more focused on the customer. That is putting the customer at the center of our operations. And as a consequence of that, we had very interesting, what we call as imperatives. We have a 10-year strategic partnership with Google, very importantly to co-create the future of travel and also to digitally transform the traveler experience. So in a sense, we are equal partners in having innovation happen in our companies and in this particular domain. So when the pandemic hit, it's very interesting to note that there was really no drop in momentum in the activities that we were working together with Google. In terms of the pandemic affecting our ability, institutional capacity for innovation, that really has, I would keep my fingers crossed to say that nothing much has really changed. One important thing in the way Sabre views the opportunities ahead is it's a vast opportunity. Sabre has set for itself a goal for creating a vastly larger market for personalized travel. You must remember, in Jan 2020, the crisis had not hit, and the goal was to create it by 2025. Now, making adjustments, we still perceive the market as being vast, and we see the opportunities for innovation being immense. Now, during this time, what has happened is most people are working from home, but you must remember that there's really nothing else for people to do. We have been pretty much under house arrest for, let's say, 4.5 months. It's not as if you could go outside, you could watch movies. You either are at home, you're working, or you're not working, and you're having interactions with your family. So one of the interesting thoughts that came up from our leadership was to introduce immense amount of learning opportunities. And we use Coursera and Google's training platforms and many other platforms like LinkedIn to make sure that our talent base has a lot of access to a lot of resources for learning, not just hard skills like technology, soft skills, and even leadership skills. And as a consequence of that, we expect that our employee base will be pushing ahead on innovation as we keep making progress because of all the good work done during this time. And that is how we are viewing this particular opportunity, that is the now normal. This will change as the situation eases up, but we would have made productive use of this time to see the innovation that's going to come up in future.
Okay. Definitely the innovation will come in the future, and we see the new kind of a business models will be introduced in the travel industry. Coming to Sanket from Intuit, I think so that every enterprise uses a solution on a daily basis if you talk about the SMBs or the large enterprises. But how you see the new phase of Intuit's growth that is written by the Asian markets in terms of the innovation impact? What are you able to achieve, the strategies put in place? And if you can talk about some success stories to drive the innovation from India or other Asian countries.
Absolutely, Rajat. So actually, before I address that, let me just talk about a few points. One of them is, you know very well my passion for startups. You know, at some point in the recent past, there came a time when the 3 T's were enabled. The 3 T's is something that I've been talking about for some time. One of them being technology. So a great leveler today is that any company anywhere has access to the same state-of-the-art technology that any of the big boys do. As a result, you can compete very hard. And in India especially, this is very relevant because it's enabled by a 3-letter acronym, which all of us know very well. It's called EMI. So, you know, anybody can have a state-of-the-art server and, you know, access to amazing technologies, whether it's storage, computing, whatnot. The second T is talent. So we were talking about the availability of talent and the demographics in India. It's absolutely amazing. The average age of the engineer, as Samir also pointed out here, is probably 10 years younger than the US. And the other part is that the population is getting much more adventurous. They would like to try out new things, you know, join a startup and see what they can do. That is absolutely awesome. And then Jaya talked about training. So if there is something that the engineers don't know about, all they have to do is get on Udemy, Coursera, Degree, whatnot, and all of a sudden they can become experts within a matter of weeks. So this is a great leveler that has come into play. And finally, you know, we're talking about innovation. The amazing part here is there's been innovation in marketing as well. So you're able to sit in India and target a market anywhere in the world. You might choose to just have a product that's selling in India or maybe even in Bangalore. But if you want to choose a suburb of Paris, you can do that as well. So the 3 T's have created a level playing field, which is absolutely amazing. And this is enabling a big surge of innovation that's happening in Asia and everywhere. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now, as far as Intuit is concerned, you know, we are a key part of product development for Intuit globally. And we innovate for Intuit's global products. And there are several products that have been completely executed out of India and today are a significant part of Intuit's revenue. from scratch within a year or two. So it's been an amazing journey. I'll share you one technology that we're quite excited in having a discussion about, because everybody loves AI nowadays. AI and ML is one of those things that everybody likes to mention. Now at Intuit, what we do is we don't talk about technology for the sake of technology's sake. We talk about technology in how it serves the customer, because we're a very customer-centric company. Now, one of the biggest products we have in the US is something called TurboTax. TurboTax is a tax filing software, the most popular one for individuals. Now, every year there are revisions made to the tax code, and the tax code in the US, it's like tens of thousands of pages long. So being able to convert that tax code and deliver a product in time that actually helps you, Rajat, to file your taxes in the US is a daunting task. And if you can very well imagine, if you hire hundreds and hundreds of people to read them and codify them, etc., it's an incredibly difficult thing to achieve, whether it's on a coordination basis or a time basis. But what we have done is taken advantage of technology called knowledge engineering and, of course, ML, to be able to extract information from these rules that are codified in the big books that the tax organization releases in the US IRS, and convert them to actual working code that results in you getting a much, much better experience when you use TurboTax. So not only does it convert the regulations into code that allows TurboTax to be compliant, but it also understands, based on your history, Rajat, which of the rules allow you to have perhaps a better tax saving, how do you file your taxes, etc. So when you come in with very little information, all of a sudden, TurboTax renders your tax filing laid out for you, and you are amazed how it happened. But fundamentally, it's the uses of technology, and this particular innovation is something that's making everybody's lives easier. And just another example of some of the great innovations that we're powering right out.
Interesting. I think so. US and India behaves a little different in terms of the customers, how they think of. I think so. India is still a jugaad market, but over there it's more process oriented in the US. And I'm sure the innovation plays a very important role to cater to different set of the customer segments. Coming to Manish from American Towers, I think so. The telecom industry is in news for the last couple of weeks. If you talk about the Geos kind of example, and I'm sure that is resulting into the business boom for your company also. I would ask you, what makes Asia different from the rest of the world when we talk about the innovation? What are the lessons other regions can learn from Asia's innovation?
Rajat, thank you. I hope you can hear.
Yes, we can.
Rajat, I think you are absolutely right. Asia is definitely different than the rest of the world. And it will continue to be so, because the drivers for innovation are significantly different in Asia than the Western countries. In order to understand what makes Asia different, we first need to understand that in Asia, each country is unique. We have India and China, which are close to 1.3 billion population each, right? People each. And then we have Singapore and New Zealand, which are close to 5 million population. Most of the Asian countries have a very young population, but then we also have Japan, where aging is a major concern, even Singapore for that matter. So, when there are so many variations in demand because of the demographics, Asia's innovation must also be innovative. I typically classify, Asia under three buckets, developed Asia, developing Asia, and underdeveloped Asia. But for our purpose today, let's just focus on the first two, the developed and developing, right? Countries like Australia, Japan, Korea, Singapore falls under developed bucket, and Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, are still developing. India, we are still developing. The innovation that takes place, in the developed countries of Asia is very much in alignment with the Western world, and is primarily technology driven, right? So whether you look at Taiwan, for example, which is leading the from a semicon point of view, South Korea on the consumer electronics side, and things involving IoT, AI, as Sanket was talking about, and the next generation lithium-ion batteries and energy storage and whatnot. And for me, closer to home, with Singapore spearheading smart nation-related innovation, drones, cybersecurity, gaming. But let me also take another very cool futuristic example of innovation, which is on the 6G radio side, which is touching, which is happening in Singapore and very close to the field which I am in. we here at ATC, for example, are supporting a deep tech startup, which is working on an R&D project to design and develop next generation metasurface antennas. This, basically new innovative product will be accomplished through merging of two disruptive technologies: wideband electromagnetic metasurfaces and 2D, 3D nanoprinting technology. So advanced, affordable, and high throughput manufacturing of metasurface antennas can be realized, by this innovation, which would be very, very critical for the 6G wireless systems, and also in other emerging applications in the aerospace area, in the automotive industries area, because all these operate in the millimeter wave band space. But now let's switch gear to the developing nations. That's a different set of countries and different set of problems and different ways of innovation. So innovation there is often led by ecosystem, and it happens at the application level. They always keep the bigger mass of the population in mind and the economies of scale while doing something. So, how can I develop something that impacts millions of people? The benefit starts from today, not tomorrow. And it is affordable. It is available at the most economical price, right? And very importantly, if I'm doing all this innovation, will my company be still profitable? So, that's the mantra of innovation in this part of the world. And I'll take some examples to, point what I'm trying to address here. In India, we can talk about Reliance Jio, right, on the telecom front. I mean, you all are fully aware of how disruptive they have. They are emerging as a truly digital company of Asia in India, right? But I guess who knows? Someday they may decide to enter Asia as well. Gojek in Indonesia, right? An on-demand multi-service platform and digital payment technology group. It's the first Indonesian unicorn company and country's decacorn company, serving close to 170 million users throughout ASEAN. Then you look at Globe Telecom in the Philippines, a country where shopping is massive, and you will see shopping malls full of people. It's also world's third largest remittance market. Mobile money has gained a lot of traction there. Online selling became a new way to transact for millions, and thanks to COVID again there. Globe Telecom's GCash usage soared 700% in May, versus this year ago. So if you look at the above examples that I shared, the examples that I'm sort of talking about, which are primarily touching the ICT and digitization aspects, you notice that the key drivers leading innovation in Asia are young population, their love for being connected all the time and doing everything online, hunger for better, cheaper and a localized solution. Where else will you get 200, 300 GB of data for less than $10? And I remember, I think even Samir was talking earlier in his, from Cisco, Rajat, when I was with Motorola, back in 2000, we used to say that if you can sell something in India and make profit, you can be profitable elsewhere in the world. And it's true even today, right? So this persistence for a low-cost, full-featured solution drives innovation at a very different level in Asia. And the last point I want to touch is on the financial inclusion part, which is imperative to the growth of financial innovation across Asia Pacific. So to sum up my answer, the lessons that one can learn from Asia to be successful are, one, innovate to touch the young hearts of Asia, innovate to make things cheaper, faster, and with a local flavor, and lastly, innovate so that it reaches the end user digitally and secure.
Got it. I think so. That is an important point. The rapid economic growth is resulting into more and more innovation. Manish, taking that point, like Manish from Endurance, I put it to you as what Manish from American Towers mentioned. The region's past few decades of rapid economic growth have largely been driven by its ability to become the factory of the world. Size, the growing purchasing power, and evolving needs of these markets will strongly influence the innovation direction of various industries. What is your viewpoint on any key drivers that will drive future innovations in Asia for this rapid economic growth?
Yeah, so look, we've talked a lot about product and software and services. We talked the fact that technology is a leveler, there is market demand, etc. But I think the other key driver that I'm seeing, and this goes back to what I initially said about the perfect storm, is that there's a little bit of anti-China sentiment out there, right? And so if you think about the factory of the world, it's really China as the factory of the world. We talk about manufacturing in Asia, but look, it's all China, or it's majority China, right? So we keep using the word Asia, but the reality is the other markets of Asia are much, much smaller compared to China. So, but the factory of the world concept is interesting, particularly from a manufacturing perspective. We've talked about software already, and I'll explain why. So, what does the anti-China rhetoric say right now is that majority of US companies and even North Asia companies want to move manufacturing out of China. Where will they move it out of China? Where they'll move it out of China, the surveys show is markets like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, maybe India, right? But what's very important for these tier 2 manufacturing markets is to become really self-reliant in manufacturing, which perhaps means they may have to vertically integrate, right? So take, for instance, we've been boasting that India is the second largest manufacturer of mobile phones. That's great, but we import mobile chipsets to put in those mobile phones, right? We assemble them completely, but we import chipsets. So when you think about innovation and vertical integration on all those elements of the production and supply chain, that becomes very important if we really want to become a quote unquote manufacturing powerhouse, not just for India, but for any of these other markets for domestic or global consumption, right? So we didn't talk a bit about manufacturing, so I wanted to bring that up, Rajat. Is manufacturing is also it's a pretty big area of potential innovation that all of these countries need to look at, and not just software and services. So I think that's another part of the market trend is this whole anti-China sentiment. People want to produce elsewhere, in addition to technology and capabilities happening. So building out the infrastructure is going to be fairly critical, I think.
Got it. I think so. The vertical integration is an important point that you mentioned. Putting that word to Sanket from Intuit, like innovation could be disruptive or incremental. And Asia's past and current innovative strengths have relied more on incremental innovations, typically involving performance improvement of established products. I think so what Manish is also saying for the mainstream markets. Would it be correct to state that it is changing, and how we are thinking to redefine innovation?
Yes, yes, Rajat, I believe it is changing. But before that, I would like to say that we should not classify innovation or create a class structure in innovation. This is incremental, this is disruptive. Because if you want to encourage a culture of innovation, whether it's in an industry or in an organization, you can't do that, right? One of the terms that was in vogue till recently in India was something called reverse innovation. You might remember that, heavily used in Zinnov publications earlier as well. Now, reverse innovation, we all understand what it is, but somehow when you take a look at it, it promotes a culture of subservience. That yes, there's innovation that has happened and we have refined it for our Indian needs or whatever it is. But that is innovation too. So we cannot, kind of create this class structure, because otherwise we are putting down innovation. I'll tell you, one of the strategies we follow in our organization is something called CDI, D for D. Okay, I'll just very briefly touch upon that to make my point. So CDI is customer-driven innovation, where it, basically you define the what it is you're trying to do. Okay, so you look at your customer and you figure out what are the pain points, and then you take a look at, as an entity, what are the pain points out of those that you can address, and finally you take a look at which of those pain points that you can address is going to cause you to have a significant hold in the market. The intersection of these three determines the what. Okay, and then the how part, which is D for D, is that you develop deep customer empathy. You come up with a solution and you go very, very broad when you're coming up with the solution. And from there, you narrow down to something practical. You create the solution, and then you get back into the iteration loop of keeping on refining the solution by developing more customer empathy. And that is the how, right? So we always say you fall in love with the problem, not the solution, because the solution you should keep on innovating. Now, some of these solutions might be absolutely dramatic, and some of these solutions might be incremental, but yet they are addressing a pain point, and we have to make sure that we respect that. So in my opinion, an incremental innovation is as good as a major disruptive one. But having said that, yes, within the industry, we are seeing major things happening that are disruptive. Now, look what happened with the India Stack, right? The India Stack enabled so many companies to do so many things. Money movement in India has become so easy that for the past, so many months, I've not really used cash. Everybody takes, the carpenter takes Google Pay, somebody takes Paytm, somebody takes whatnot. It's absolutely amazing. And I believe a lot more innovation is going to happen. Now there's new standards that have been created. It's a public-private partnership for enabling small loans. So all of these things are innovations being enabled through a platform that's been provided for everybody. So yes, huge disruptive innovations have started to happen and they'll continue, but let us not put down the incremental.
Okay, sure. I think so. Yes, the reverse innovation. I think so. India is leading in that also, and I think so. It's well acknowledged by the global markets as well. I think so. That's a good point, and Zinnov has put a point of view on that as well. But Jay, if I come to you and if I talk about the funding, is it easy or difficult to fund innovation at this time during this pandemic time? How are you navigating your organization maze to ensure enough capabilities, team, investments to continue innovation for future?
So a very interesting question, Rajat. I would tend to think that one would not view it as much in the lens of easy or difficult, but more a question of prioritization. So the way I spoke in the previous section, we were talking about institutional innovation. That is continuing regardless, because that is set, innovation directions are set with our partners. So we co-create value with our partners. The interesting part, referring back to some of Sanket's comment, is in the travel industry, we co-create value with our customers as well. So now if you look at the fact that we are in the travel industry, the travel patterns have completely changed. The way people would sit in an aeroplane has changed. The kind of documentation you would require, COVID testing certificate, your permissions from the other police commissioner to go from point A to point B, these documents have all suddenly become different. And so we have to react to the customer's need immediately, and so help in the now normal. So help do the innovation that is necessary so that travel can continue at this time. But that is not the new normal. The new normal has not yet been defined, and it is still in the process of definition. Because even though everybody speaks a lot about work from home, the fact is that its long-term impacts are still being understood. So people talk about being always on from 7 in the morning till 10 in the night, because now the boundaries between work and home are blurring. So the guidelines for that have yet to emerge. And similarly, when we look at the travel industry, the new normal will be different from what is the now normal. And so innovation for that also needs to continue to happen. So if we look at innovation at, let's say, 3 different levels, and not necessarily categories of big or small or disruptive or otherwise. At the institutional level, all organizations would have secured funding, and that would carry on because that is critical to the company's evolution in their own marketplace and domain. Then you have innovation that happens at the product, the specific features which customers require, moving technology from A to B to the next generation. Those kind of innovations, depending on the appetite that the customer has today or the mind space the customer has today, that would still continue. But if there is co-creation, that might actually go a bit on the back burner, because all entities in the travel and hospitality space are focused on making sure that they survive the COVID pandemic and the economic situation that is following it, and which will last a little bit longer. The third kind of innovation is the one which happens through water cooler talks, through architects talking with each other. And that kind of innovation, it's very strange. Most organizations have these hackathons, different kinds of blue sky hackathons or product focused hackathons. Those have now actually, those are morphing, and people are using them more as employee engagement activities. But the fact remains that the pressure on innovation or the push on innovation still continues in organizations. In our organization, we have many different kinds of innovative activity at the developer level. So we call it a solve it, where somebody solves a nifty technical problem and presents what he has done for others to learn from. We use something called big pitch, where customer-facing people work with customers and come back with a customer problem, and we work on trying to solve it in a defined 5-day, 10-day window. And then we have something which we call the blitz code, which is different from a hackathon, where we try to focus people's energies on taking the existing product and doing something really different, really spectacular, really something which has fallen behind, or bringing in a new capability on it. And we have been successful in all 3 in the past. In today's context, that is morphing and changing to suit today's distributed context. So innovation at that level continues, and that actually does not need too much of funding support. The funding support is one at the institutional level and those which we co-create with customers. And with customers, as I said, it depends on their current mind space and appetite for looking into the future. But in the travel and hospitality sector, that is a few months away, I would tend to think. Then there is this other normal technological innovation which has been going on for a long time, contribution to open source, usage of building of new tools, that is happening unabated. In fact, just in the last couple of weeks, a team from our offices in Bangalore added new components to an open source tool for code evaluation and pushed it back into the GitHub. So if you notice, if you look at the different segments, at the institutional level and at the developer level, it is continuing. Where there is a dependency on the customer, especially for people like us or industries where we co-create with customers, those have slowed down a bit. And that's primarily because of mind space with the customer.
Sure. So Jay, I think so everyone will agree we all are missing that water cooler conversations, the coffee conversations, which definitely result in some new kind of innovation.
Totally.
Hope the time will come back. But Manish, from American Towers, if I come back to you, you're one of the largest independent telecom tower company, and you work very closely with pretty much most of the mobile operators worldwide. Where do you see your industry heading over the next 5 years? And what is the role of innovation in this overall growth strategy? If you can quickly talk about that.
Sure. I think that's a great question, Rajat, and very relevant in today's context, because today we are surviving because of telecom. A lot is changing in the telecom world for sure. The whole buzz around 5G and data growth, and I'm not even touching 5G from a US-China angle here. And then the impact on ICT industry because of COVID, right? Many of you may be aware that telecom is now an essential service in most of the countries. And that puts an additional responsibility on the shoulders of the MNOs and passive infra providers. These developments are driving the innovation in the telecom space. And we will see the impact of the same over the next few years. Let me share some stats to give you the context here. 4G penetration in Asia crossed 60% last year, and we are expecting it to touch 70% over a period of next 5 years. 5G is picking up, 25% penetration expected in the next 5 years. Close to 700 million people across the region, I'm talking Asia region, will start using mobile internet by 2025. 2/3 will be from China and India. So huge potential there also, and it's a big segment of the population which is still untapped. And one of my favorite ones, mobile data consumption. I mean, we all remember in India, we were using a 1 GB per month type of thing at the max. Today, we are consuming around 10 GB. I'm talking again from Asia perspective, 10 GB per month today, which is heading towards 29 GB, 30 GB over the next 5-year period, right? So, a lot of things are happening in the telecom world, and obviously innovation will have to play a very important role. I'll share 5-6 key areas where a lot of innovation is taking place and quickly touch on everyone. So the first one is energy efficiency. If you look at 5G antennas, as per the current vendor specs that are available out in the market and who we are talking to, these antennas will consume 3 times the energy of an LTE or a 4G antenna. And if you're deploying both 4G and 5G radios on a tower, the total energy consumption will jump by at least 70%. So, something needs to be done on the energy front. Otherwise, it's too difficult to survive there, and also the costs will increase dramatically. Talking about the co-creation and how our customers drive a lot of innovation. I'll give you an example of Myanmar. Although we are not in Myanmar, but our industry, is very much there. And in Myanmar, because of power availability, you have to survive on diesel generators in the nighttime. So, DGs are running at every tower site. In the nighttime, they just create a lot of noise. Now, when the villagers and people who sleep there, when they came to know about it, they started creating a big ruckus about it. They said, hey, look, guys, we're not able to sleep. It is affecting our life. So, innovation took place, and basically companies came up with silent DGs or noise-free DGs, So that's one example. Second is tower design. Okay. Number of tenants, radio equipments, even regulatory policies are impacting tower design. Sharing was not possible earlier. Each operator used to have their own, towers, and the design was different. Today, sharing is taking place a lot more. It's talk of the town now. In most of the Asian countries. So, there's an impact on engineering design of the tower. How can you have, let's say 3 or 4 tenants? And then in countries like Philippines, you need to support wind speeds of 320 kilometers per hour. How, it just requires a lot of innovation and out of the box thinking. Smart poles, when we do 5G rollout in the coming years, tower densification would happen because of the higher frequency bands that 5G operates in. So, we have to look at smart poles.
I'm sure there are many innovations that you can talk about, but these are the interesting ones. And I'll come back to you. But
Sure.
Manish from Endurance, there's an interesting question on the chat, and I thought I'll put it to you. Innovation within a company can be driven by different players. It could be your own employees, it could be the startups that you're incubating, or it could be your partners also. And during such a crisis that is happening, how do you prioritize which one to pursue and which to let go if needed?
Yes, I think we talked a lot about customer-inspired innovation, and I think right now that's the priority, right? Is customer-inspired innovation, because as you start seeing a lot of customers, at least for us in the internet business, and we serve web professionals and small business owners, as they come online for the first time, or at least bring their business online, you're starting to see a set of challenges that each one of them have, which you may not have designed for, right? So I think customers and customer-inspired innovation right now is probably the most critical, because there are lots of these nuances and cases that you see in different markets, which are not your traditional, example. Here's a website builder, go build a website, right? Or I can connect you to someone to go build a website. All of a sudden, how someone uses a mobile phone with the linkage to a marketplace and wants to have their own online presence and an app and maybe a drop shipping solution. I mean, all of a sudden now you're seeing all the things a small business owner in India wants to do, right? And they're telling you what they want to do, and you can actually create a solution based on their specific needs, which to date haven't really come online because they've been really doing most of the stuff offline. All they do online is WhatsApp, right? And I'm talking about the majority of small business owners in India. So I'd say customer-inspired innovation for today's needs in this environment, I think, is fairly critical. So that's what I would go with in terms of our focus area. The second thing I'd say is we have a lot of channel partners, web professionals or resellers of our products. And what we find is that very often we and many companies like us don't touch small business owners across India. But these channel partners and web professionals touch them in literally every town in India. And there's like over 2 lakh of them on our platform, right? And so what we then find is getting inputs from those web professionals on what their end customers need as they're coming online and using all these online services. That becomes very interesting. So you talked about partner-led innovation, but it's more about these partners or resellers of ours actually telling us what customers in many internal parts of India are actually looking for and need and want, right? So that's how I would answer your question, Rajat.
I think that's a great insight. And I quickly move to Sanket, and this is my personal question. Is innovation only limited to product, or you see some innovation on the business models also? Sanket, if you can quickly put your thoughts on that, I'll appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, it definitely reaches all facets of an organization. So you can't just limit it to product itself. I'll give you just a couple of examples. Case in point with COVID, there are 2 areas that we're looking at. One, the HR organization, for example, right now has to become really innovative to figure out how best to structure, how best to affect the culture of the organization, to inculcate values on the new people coming in. How do you onboard people? That's a very, very tricky situation we're in right now. But I think all organizations are doing amazingly well in this. The other part, which is kind of a part technology, part business model, is we have a technology called Virtual Expert Platform, which is being enabled in products like TurboTax and our QuickBooks Online product, which allows you to connect with an expert virtually. Now, in this day and age of everybody being scared of somebody sneezing on them, that's especially important. But doing it in a very secure manner, in a manner that allows you to have a good confidence that your financial data is secure, yet you're connecting with somebody who's credible and can help you, is a huge, huge advantage. So I think it affects all facets. And just on a lighter note, another area that has called for a lot of innovation during this time is a lot of guys trying to cut their own hair at home, right? Even the people having much more follicles than me, right, have been trying to figure out how best to do that. And that itself is innovation. And you're looking very handsome, Rajat. And so that means it must be working. So I think we need to have a very broad mind about what innovation is. And I'm glad you chose this topic for today.
Sure. Thanks, Sanket. Jaya, on the other day, Pari was mentioning during the modern workplace or the intelligent workplace, going forward, employee location while hiring the talent, whether employee location will matter for innovation team?
So work from anywhere, as it's called now, which is different from work from home. And most people sometimes forget the nuance. You're right. It will heavily influence the composition of team, as some of the earlier speakers pointed out. But for innovation to happen, bright minds need to interact with each other very strongly. And so location might not be as important in most parts of the cycle. So if people are able to, today, for example, when we have innovative innovative product discussions, people just fire up a meeting, they join the meeting, they have their discussions, they brainstorm, and they get on with the activity that they are doing. However, there are certain stages when you're actually fleshing out the details of a solution, when you actually need to come together. And it is seen to be far more efficient in ironing out kinks in the solution that you eventually come up with, to make it more robust. So those parts, I suspect, will still continue. So maybe the processes will evolve and change to allow people to work from anywhere, but at the right time be able to converge for short durations of the development cycle to come together and interact very closely, especially when they are fleshing out the details and perhaps at the time of release. The other implication of being from anywhere is people can actually set up their work environment any way they want. They don't need to have a Dilbert cubicle and be strongly guided by office guidelines on how office furniture should look. And that might actually, on a lighter note, really fire up their creative juices. As an example, the other part is when people are by themselves. What we have noticed is innovation has both the interaction requirement as well as work, think by themselves, reflect, sort of spend some amount of time trying to gather insights about the space. So I suspect that this might prove net positive for the whole innovation effort, which will allow both. You will be working from anywhere, and so therefore you have the reflection time, and you come back and work together to flesh out the solution.
Got it. And this is the last question to Manish from American Towers, a unique question. What is a mantra or playbook to become a global innovation leader from Asia? If you summarize in a one-line statement, what will be the global mantra?
I would say that you got to listen to your customer, and you know, I mean, it may sound that your customer is not talking sense, you know, in the initial, but you got to understand where he's coming from, right? And then you need to sort of localize it, think about it, you know, bring your own technological innovations into it. But at the same time, I think very important is you need to keep the money part in mind. You know, innovation does not mean things need to be expensive. So you have to make sure that the new product, new solution, new service is still, you know, I mean, economical and is affordable. I think those 2-3 things are very, very important.
So this is great. And I think so we overshoot the time, but thank you all for your valuable time for this discussion. Now I can say I'm a little more innovation expert. I can speak more about that. I appreciate all of your valuable time. Thank you, Sanket. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Manish from Endurance, and Chaya. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rajat, and thanks to Zinnov.
Thanks, Rajat. Thank you.
across a set of problems we had to solve, we had to pick a leader, but not just a leader that understood technology, one that would roll up their sleeves and collaborate with what I would consider a young company that we are.
When I think of Bristlecone, what comes to mind for me is just a great partner. We've had a relationship with Bristlecone for nearly a decade. We have common customers. We've relied on Bristlecone ourselves in the past. And I just think of a very good, quality, trusted partner that is on the path with us to scale and growth.
What I really love about our Bristlecone colleagues is that I think they go above and beyond, and they really try to help us innovate, and they don't mind putting in the extra hours and us co-innovating, which I appreciate.
Bristlecone, I really think of as a great partner, right? They're someone who can take best-in-class technologies out there and solve real business problems.
We are innovating for a today and a tomorrow of path-breaking possibilities. We envisage a unified future of development through relentless innovation, equality, process-based management, and diligence in all our endeavors. Front to Back uses the exponential power of cloud and cognitive to provide hyper-personalized digital experience to clients and their end customers. In the pursuit of ceaseless innovation, Next Labs aids in research on emergent and future technologies and industry-relevant solutions. Choice that helps you discover your potential and foster your knowledge, giving you a flourishing career.
Is magic real? Before we answer the question, let's define what magic is. It's all about delivering an experience that leaves the audience in awe, wondering how an impossible feat was made possible. Enterprises today expect products to deliver meaningful experiences and evolve continuously. That's where we come in. Tech Mahindra delivers future-ready solutions that truly matter. We're driven by our innovative spirit, which is the culmination of cutting-edge technology and decades of innate understanding of industry. We call this inner engineering. Our customers entrust us to bring in disruption and digital transformation while rationalizing the R&D costs with frugal innovations for faster time to market. At Tech Mahindra Engineering, we've got that covered by taking great strides in creating cutting-edge product experiences, made possible by 4 areas of our focus: design, engineering, digital, and consulting. Tech Mahindra's engineering expertise, combined with Pininfarina and Bio, is helping us realize our vision for a design engineering-led future. With the excellence and ingenuity Bio and Pininfarina brings to our capabilities, the scope of our inner engineering has expanded to new heights, and we're just getting started. Our vision for the future is not just limited to achieving excellence in engineering. We believe in making a meaningful change in the way we live. We're making air travel safer and cleaner. We're creating affordable and relevant experiences for Indian consumers. We reduce time to market and accelerate product development. We help customers diversify into new and exciting verticals. We help connect people during difficult times. We co-innovate and co-author future-ready products. Our inner engineering spirit drives our digital efforts as well. Our feedback engineering efforts help our customers create better intuitive experiences. Our path-breaking aircraft health monitoring system for one of the top aircraft manufacturers generates terabytes of aviation data, making air travel safer and more reliable. We're also creating a future around customer experiences through digital journeys, enabled by AI, ML, 5G, and blockchain. And that's not all. Through our frugal engineering and consulting efforts, we managed to save over $2 billion for our customers through our value engineering approach. Let's now come back to our first question. Is magic real? Magic, for us at Tech Mahindra Engineering, is creating an experience that was once thought inconceivable by channeling our inner passion and creating a unique experience that takes everyone's breath away. So yes, we believe in magic and the power of our inner engineering beliefs. Well, look around. You're in the midst of magicians who are defining the future of engineering today.
Thank you everyone for that engaging and a very, very insightful discussion. Hold on to your seat, folks, we're almost there. As the sessions we witnessed today show that Asia is truly set to dominate the world over the next few years, especially in the light of the ongoing pandemic and its effects. Right, to sum up the key learnings and insights we have gathered through this amazingly insightful set of sessions, we have with us our very own Sangeeta Anand, Principal at Zinnov, and I'd like to now hand it over to Sangeeta. Over to you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you, everybody, and hello. And that was a very, very exciting track, and I'm really honored and privileged to be part of my very first Confluence experience, and also to be closing this track for today. And the concept that resonated throughout this track was of Atmanirbharta, the need for self-reliance and like self-sustaining. And that was a common theme across all the sessions we saw today, starting from the very first keynote that was presented by Amita and Nilesh, which talked about and showcased like why Asia is, the perfect hotspot for the new changes and returning to strength, right? It is in our DNA. It's already built in us. It's infused in our character, the community strength, the resilience, our agility, our frugality, our strength in surviving through adversity. We have all the necessary ingredients, and combine that with all the younger talent and the right ecosystem maturity and business environment. We have all the evidence, and as the data showed in the reports that were presented today in the keynote speech, Asia is perfectly poised to take over as the next hotspot for talent. And also there were a lot of success stories were presented, like, your Aadhaar, WeChat, Raksul, and all of these showcases what Asia can do whenever the need arises. Actually, we also witnessed, how Samir Gade, in his speech, even though there were some technology challenges, he was very calm and composed, that, being resilient, and it's all built in our DNA, when he was able to navigate through all the challenges and yet present us a very insightful and positive and confident speech on the digitalization and the opportunities that has opened up, and how technology is going to reshape and fill the gaps that exist today in developing countries like India, be it in the poverty, education, or healthcare. The need of the hour is to reflect and reimagine the future, and also to become the test bed for all technologies. And we had a very interesting fireside chat from Amita, Suzuki-san, and Raj, aptly titled Jay, and kudos to you guys, Jay Ho. And that was a very, very invigorating and thought-provoking chat, which also gave us some really clear, actionable items as to what we need to do to be best positioned for taking advantage of this opportunity, and how we need to leverage all the digital transformation capabilities we have, and also to make sure the strengthen the partnership between India and Japan and US for leveraging each other's strength. And the special highlight today was the fireside chat with our Balki, who also talked about talent, and it is not about managing the talent, but collaborating and working together as one team to bring out the best that we can get from each other. And by doing that, how we can build the right product before we can put it into branding or marketing, and how you can take all the random ideas, filter them, and bring the best idea to the forefront. And he also even touched upon the Parkinson's laws about working smart and making the best use of time. And finally, the last keynote panel, which was such an interesting and exciting talk between Raja Jai and Manish and Sanket, talked about innovation. That's the key strength, right? Like in all times of adversity, what has actually helped the humanity and the human generations to sail through was the innovation and how we have used technology to advance ourselves in this space. And they talked about how innovation, how Asia has stepped up to be the key spot for innovation through working from anywhere, and even for working on core platforms, and how the learning opportunities, employees have taken advantage of the learning opportunities to build upon their capabilities to support innovation, and how we have the most adventurous, young, and talented innovation pool that we have here, and how we need to leverage that. And innovation is not only about customer focused innovation, which is very, very important, but also the need for some grassroots innovations that happens at every level in the organization was also touched upon. And as I said earlier, the key thing that resonated through all of these tracks was about the need for self-reliant and recognizing our own strength and building upon that through effective partnerships and collaborations. And maybe in the future, make what is called the Asia zone, just like a Eurozone, where we can have a free flowing of trade and talent to build the right strength that can help us be the most successful market in the future. I'd also like to thank all our partners today for supporting us and making this conference a huge success. Our gold partners, our silver and platinum sponsors. Thank you so much. And please stay tuned, and we have exciting new tracks coming up at 4:30, and we have a very interesting line of speakers lined up. We have Sanjay Mirchandani from President and CEO of Commvault, and he'll be talking about the data vortex and building an anti-fragile enterprise of tomorrow. And we also have building for security for the next and beyond, including speakers like Ashish Sinha, the CTO of MasterCard, along with the keynote panel talking us about building a security motor. Decoding hyper-intelligent automation, a journey towards scale and growth and hyper-consistency. Mark Foster, Senior Vice President of IBM Services, Global Business Services, IBM, will be presenting that. And also the software revolution, we will have an you, and over to you, Nikita.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you all for joining us for the track Asia, the Epicenter of the New World Order on day 4 of Zinnov Confluence 2020. We'll see you at 4:15 for the last and the most exciting track, Technology, Now, Next and Beyond. This is your host, Nikita Shiv, signing off. Stay safe and have a great day.